saya beli tuh dari situ gula, Indomie, hampir semua barang dari warung pangan.
Kalau menurut saya, menurut pengalaman saya, sebenarnya kalau untuk aplikasinya warung pangan sih sebenarnya simple kok. Lebih memudahkan kita dalam berbelanja dan memilih barang itu. Dan yang terpenting lagi, tanpa kita harus pergi, tanpa kita harus keluar dari warung, tanpa kita harus nutup warung pun, kita udah bisa langsung pesan dan dapat barang. Mudah mengoperasionalkannya dan memudahkan saya dalam berbelanja.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before the event starts, we would like to invite the guests to please register your attendance at the registration table. Afterwards, you can capture the moment at the photo wall at the front, and please enjoy the dinner that have been specially prepared on the ballroom. Thank you. Once again, good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before we start the event, we'd like to invite all of you to please make sure to register your attendance at the registration table. Afterwards, please capture the moments you're enjoying at this event at the photo wall in front of the bathroom. And please enjoy the dinner that have been specially prepared right here in the ballroom. Thank you.
Keberlanjutan program-program yang dilakukan ini kan banyak banget.
Ada yang memetakan petani, tapi ada yang menjadi supply, gitu kan? Jadi mundur ke sebelah sana, maju ke sebelah sana, gitu. Jadi sepanjang supply chain itu gimana sih rame-rame? Wah, kenceng banget itu kayak di luar. Terus mungkin yang kedua, lebih mumpung ada Pak Teten dan Mbak Putri sih di sini, dan ada Mbak Sinto juga, ada Mbak Neneng, ada apa namanya teman-teman yang lain. Sebetulnya kalau ada satu challenge selama ini ngerjain, ada yang udah 7 tahun, ada yang berapa tahun, request apa sih yang ingin diminta ke pemerintah dan ke teman-teman? Agak lama proses untuk memverifikasi seseorang masuk, misalnya petaninya masuk seperti apa, kemudian masuk seperti apa, itu semua masih dilakukan secara manual. Jadi yang VIDA coba bantu adalah bagaimana proses ini bisa dilakukan secara digital dalam waktu yang sesingkat-singkatnya, tapi tingkat keamanannya sama dengan apabila kita bertemu dengan orang secara face to face.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May we have your attention, please? Before the event starts, we'd just like to make sure that all guests have registered their attendance at the registration table. Who have registered, thank you very much. And for those who haven't, please proceed to the registration table to register your attendance. And don't forget to capture all the moments at this event at the photo wall in front of the ballroom. And then please enjoy the dinner that have been specially prepared by Hotel Ayana right here in the ballroom. Please make sure you enjoy all of this before we start the event. Thank you.
selama pandemi 2 tahun itu banyak kantor yang tutup. Nah, suami saya itu nggak ada panggilan sama sekali tuh selama 2 tahun. Daripada gudang ini nggak dipakai ya, saya buka warung perapatan setu.
Warung Kuning Jaya itu warung gerobakan ya, gerobakan kecil. Ukurannya itu paling berapa ya? 3x3 kalau nggak salah, gerobak pinggir jalan. Ya kita sedia kebutuhan sehari-hari seperti gula, terigu, minyak goreng yang sehari-hari tetangga kita butuhkan. Nah itu yang kita sediakan.
Setelah saya membuka warung perapatan setu, ada sales dari warung pangan tuh menawarkan untuk bergabung menjadi mitra.
Perannya warung pangan bagi warung saya itu sebenarnya luar biasa loh. Dalam artian gini, hampir semua kebutuhan yang diperlukan di warung saya untuk sembako itu saya pasti ngambilnya dari warung pangan.
Semenjak kenalnya warung pangan ini, ya kita merasa sangat terbantu. Mulai dari barang, minyak, apapun itu, barang-barang yang kira-kira harganya mahal, itu di warung pangan jauh lebih murah.
Stok susah, barang susah. Tapi kalau di warung pangan, stok tuh ada terus gitu loh. Jadi seandainya kita butuh sewaktu-waktu, stok tuh stabil dan kita selalu dapat barang.
Dari download itu saya mendaftarnya cukup mudah ya. Kalau dulu mendaftarnya itu kita lewat handphone, berbelanjanya pun kita lewat online, bisa memesan lewat HP.
Itu salah satu yang menjadi faktor bikin majunya tuh dari warung pangan nih, karena kita awal-awal gabung dengan warung pangan. Nah yang kedua itu awal pandemi kemarin, itu jadi titik baliknya dari warung gerobaknya, warung kuning nih bisa nyampe sekarang ini seperti itu.
Sejauh ini Go Digital itu membantu banget. Nggak perlu pergi kemana-mana, tinggal dari aplikasi, dikirimnya juga. Apapun itu kan ada di sana.
Beras, kopi, semua saya beli tuh dari situ, gula, Indomie, hampir semua barang dari warung pangan.
Kalau menurut saya, menurut pengalaman saya sebenarnya kalau untuk aplikasinya warung pangan sih sebenarnya simple kok. Lebih memudahkan kita dalam berbelanja dan memilih barang itu. Dan yang terpenting lagi tanpa kita harus pergi, tanpa kita harus keluar dari warung, tanpa kita harus nutup warung pun kita udah bisa langsung pesan dan dapat barang. Mudah mengoperasionalkannya dan memudahkan saya dalam berbelanja.
Untuk memastikan keberlanjutan program-program yang dilakukan ini kan banyak banget
Ada yang memetakan petani, tapi ada yang menjadi supply. Gitu kan, jadi mundur ke sebelah sana, maju ke sebelah sana gitu. Jadi sepanjang supply chain itu gimana sih rame-rame? Wah, kenceng banget itu kayak di luar. Terus mungkin yang kedua, lebih mumpung ada Pak Teten dan Mbak Putri sih di sini, dan ada Mbak Sinto juga, ada Mbak Neneng, ada teman-teman yang lain. Sebetulnya kalau ada satu challenge selama ini ngerjain, ada yang 27 tahun, ada yang berapa tahun, request apa sih yang ingin diminta ke pemerintah dan ke teman-teman? Agak lama proses untuk memverifikasi seseorang masuk, misalnya petaninya masuk seperti apa, kebenarannya masuk seperti apa, itu semua masih dilakukan secara manual. Jadi yang VIDA coba bantu adalah bagaimana proses ini bisa dilakukan secara digital dalam waktu yang sesingkat-singkatnya, tapi tingkat keamanannya sama dengan apabila kita bertemu dengan orang secara face to face.
Selama pandemi 2 tahun itu banyak kantor yang tutup. Nah suami saya itu nggak ada panggilan sama sekali tuh selama 2 tahun. Daripada gudang ini nggak dipakai ya, saya buka warung perapatan setu.
Warung Kuning Jaya itu warung gerobakan ya, gerobakan kecil. Ukurannya itu paling berapa ya? 3x3 kalau nggak salah, gerobak pinggir jalan. Ya kita sedia kebutuhan sehari-hari seperti gula, terigu, minyak goreng yang sehari-hari tetangga kita butuhkan. Nah itu yang kita sediakan.
Setelah saya membuka warung perapatan setu, ada sales dari warung pangan tuh menawarkan untuk bergabung menjadi mitra.
Perannya warung pangan bagi warung saya itu sebenarnya luar biasa loh. Dalam artian gini, hampir semua kebutuhan yang diperlukan di warung saya untuk sembako itu saya pasti ngambilnya dari warung pangan.
Semenjak kenalnya warung pangan ini, ya kita merasa sangat terbantu. Mulai dari barang, minyak, apapun itu, barang-barang yang kira-kira harganya mahal, itu di warung pangan jauh lebih murah.
Stok susah, barang susah. Tapi kalau di warung pangan, stok tuh ada terus gitu loh. Jadi seandainya kita butuh sewaktu-waktu, stok tuh stabil dan kita selalu dapat barang.
Dari download itu saya mendaftarnya cukup mudah ya. Kalau dulu mendaftarnya itu kita lewat handphone. Berbelanjanya pun kita lewat online. Bisa memesan lewat HP.
Itu salah satu yang menjadi faktor bikin majunya tuh dari warung pangan nih. Karena kita awal-awal gabung dengan warung pangan. Nah yang kedua itu awal pandemi kemarin. Itu jadi titik baliknya dari warung gerobaknya, warung kuning nih bisa nyampe sekarang ini seperti itu.
Sejauh ini Go Digital itu membantu banget. Nggak perlu pergi kemana-mana, tinggal dari aplikasi, dikirimnya juga. Apapun itu kan ada di sana.
Beras, kopi, semua saya beli tuh dari situ, gula, Indomie, hampir semua barang dari warung pangan.
Kalau menurut saya, menurut pengalaman saya sebenarnya kalau untuk aplikasinya warung pangan sih sebenarnya simple kok. Lebih memudahkan kita dalam berbelanja dan memilih barang gitu. Dan yang terpenting lagi tanpa kita harus pergi, tanpa kita harus keluar dari warung, tanpa kita harus nutup warung pun kita udah bisa langsung pesan dan dapat barang. Mudah mengoperasionalkannya dan memudahkan saya dalam berbelanja.
Untuk memastikan keberlanjutan program-program yang dilakukan ini kan banyak banget
Ada yang memetakan petani tapi ada yang menjadi supply gitu kan, jadi mundur ke sebelah sana, maju ke sebelah sana gitu. Jadi sepanjang supply chain itu gimana sih rame-rame? Wah, kenceng banget itu kayak di luar. Terus mungkin yang kedua, lebih mumpung ada Pak Teten dan Mbak Putri sih di sini, dan ada Mbak Shinto juga, ada Mbak Neneng, ada apa namanya teman-teman yang lain. Sebetulnya kalau ada satu challenge selama ini ngerjain, ada yang udah 7 tahun, ada yang berapa tahun, request apa sih yang ingin diminta ke pemerintah dan ke teman, agak lama proses untuk memverifikasi seseorang masuk, misalnya petaninya masuk seperti apa, kebenarannya masuk seperti apa, itu semua masih dilakukan secara manual. Jadi yang VIDA coba bantu adalah bagaimana proses ini bisa dilakukan secara digital dalam waktu yang sesingkat-singkatnya, tapi tingkat keamanannya sama dengan apabila kita bertemu dengan orang secara face to face.
selama pandemi 2 tahun itu banyak kantor yang tutup. Nah, suami saya itu nggak ada panggilan sama sekali tuh selama 2 tahun. Daripada gudang ini nggak dipakai ya, saya buka warung perapatan setu.
Warung Kuning Jaya itu warung gerobakan ya, gerobakan kecil. Ukurannya itu paling berapa ya? 3x3 kalau nggak salah, gerobak pinggir jalan. Ya kita sedia kebutuhan sehari-hari seperti gula, terigu, minyak goreng yang sehari-hari tetangga kita butuhkan. Nah itu yang kita sediakan.
Setelah saya membuka warung perapatan setu, ada sales dari warung pangan tuh menawarkan untuk bergabung menjadi mitra.
Perannya warung pangan bagi warung saya itu sebenarnya luar biasa loh. Dalam artian gini, hampir semua kebutuhan yang diperlukan di warung saya untuk sembako itu saya pasti ngambilnya dari warung pangan.
Semenjak kenalnya warung pangan ini, ya kita merasa sangat terbantu. Mulai dari barang, minyak, apapun itu, barang-barang yang kira-kira harganya mahal, itu di warung pangan jauh lebih murah.
Stok susah, barang susah. Tapi kalau di warung pangan, stok tuh ada terus gitu loh. Jadi seandainya kita butuh sewaktu-waktu, stok tuh stabil dan kita selalu dapat barang.
Dari download itu saya mendaftarnya cukup mudah ya. Kalau dulu mendaftarnya itu kita lewat handphone. Berbelanjanya pun kita lewat online. Bisa memesan lewat HP.
Itu salah satu yang menjadi faktor bikin majunya tuh dari warung pangan nih. Karena kita awal-awal gabung dengan warung pangan. Nah yang kedua itu awal pandemi kemarin. Itu jadi titik baliknya dari warung gerobaknya, warung kuning nih bisa nyampe sekarang ini seperti itu.
Sejauh ini Go Digital itu membantu banget. Nggak perlu pergi kemana-mana, tinggal dari aplikasi, dikirimnya juga. Apapun itu kan ada di sana.
Beras, kopi, semua saya beli tuh dari situ, gula, Indomie, hampir semua barang dari warung pangan.
Kalau menurut saya, menurut pengalaman saya sebenarnya kalau untuk aplikasinya warung pangan sih sebenarnya simple kok. Lebih memudahkan kita dalam berbelanja dan memilih barang itu. Dan yang terpenting lagi tanpa kita harus pergi, tanpa kita harus keluar dari warung, tanpa kita harus menutup warung pun kita udah bisa langsung pesan dan dapat barang. Mudah mengoperasionalkannya dan memudahkan saya dalam berbelanja.
Untuk memastikan keberlanjutan program-program yang dilakukan, ini kan banyak banget
Ada yang memetakan petani, tapi ada yang menjadi supply. Itu kan jadi mundur ke sebelah sana, maju ke sebelah sana gitu. Jadi sepanjang supply chain itu gimana sih rame-rame? Wah, kenceng banget itu kayak di luar. Terus mungkin yang kedua, lebih mumpung ada Pak Teter dan Mbak Putri sih di sini, dan ada Mbak Sinto juga, ada Mbak Neneng, ada teman-teman yang lain. Sebetulnya kalau ada satu challenge selama ini ngerjain, ada yang udah 7 tahun, ada yang berapa tahun, request apa sih yang ingin diminta ke pemerintah dan ke teman-teman? Agak lama proses untuk memverifikasi seseorang masuk, misalnya petaninya masuk seperti apa, kebenarannya masuk seperti apa, itu semua masih dilakukan secara manual. Jadi yang VIDA coba bantu adalah bagaimana proses ini bisa dilakukan secara digital dalam waktu yang sesingkat-singkatnya, tapi tingkat keamanannya sama dengan apabila kita bertemu dengan orang secara face to face.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We kindly invite all participants to please enter the venue. The B20 Digital ID Workshop, Scaling Trust in the Digital World, will proceed shortly. Please make sure that all of you have registered at the registration table. You may find our ushers are ready to guide you to your seating. Your cooperation is much appreciated. Thank you. Once again, good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We kindly invite everyone to please enter the ballroom area, especially those of you who are still outside at the foyer area, because the B20 Digital ID Workshop, Scaling Trust in the Digital World, will proceed shortly. We'd like to remind you to please register at the registration table if you haven't done so. If you have, then please proceed to your seating. Our ushers are ready to help you if you need any assistance. Your cooperation is very much appreciated. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Selama pandemi 2 tahun itu banyak kantor yang tutup. Nah, suami saya itu nggak ada panggilan sama sekali tuh selama 2 tahun. Daripada gudang ini nggak dipakai ya, saya buka warung perapatan setu.
Warung Kuning Jaya itu warung gerobakan ya, gerobakan kecil. Ukurannya itu paling berapa ya? 3x3 kalau nggak salah, gerobak pinggir jalan. Ya kita sedia kebutuhan sehari-hari seperti gula, terigu, minyak goreng yang sehari-hari tetangga kita butuhkan. Nah itu yang kita sediakan.
Setelah saya membuka warung perapatan setu, ada sales dari warung pangan tuh menawarkan untuk bergabung menjadi mitra.
Perannya warung pangan bagi warung saya itu sebenarnya luar biasa loh. Dalam artian gini, hampir semua kebutuhan yang diperlukan di warung saya untuk sembako itu saya pasti ngambilnya dari warung pangan.
Semenjak kenalnya warung pangan ini, ya kita merasa sangat terbantu. Mulai dari barang, minyak, apapun itu, barang-barang yang kira-kira harganya mahal, itu di warung pangan jauh lebih murah.
Stok susah, barang susah. Tapi kalau di warung pangan, stok tuh ada terus gitu loh. Jadi seandainya kita butuh sewaktu-waktu, stok tuh stabil dan kita selalu dapat barang.
Dari download itu saya mendaftarnya cukup mudah ya. Kalau dulu mendaftarnya itu kita lewat handphone. Berbelanjanya pun kita lewat online. Bisa memesan lewat HP.
Itu salah satu yang menjadi faktor bikin majunya tuh dari warung pangan nih. Karena kita awal-awal gabung dengan warung pangan. Nah yang kedua itu awal pandemi kemarin. Itu jadi titik baliknya dari warung gerobaknya, warung kuning nih bisa nyampe sekarang ini seperti itu.
Sejauh ini Go Digital itu membantu banget. Nggak perlu pergi kemana-mana, tinggal dari aplikasi, dikirimnya juga. Apapun itu kan ada di sana.
Beras, kopi, semua saya beli tuh dari situ, gula, Indomie, hampir semua barang dari warung pangan.
Kalau menurut saya, menurut pengalaman saya sebenarnya kalau untuk aplikasinya warung pangan sih sebenarnya simple kok. Lebih memudahkan kita dalam berbelanja dan memilih barang itu. Dan yang terpenting lagi tanpa kita harus pergi, tanpa kita harus keluar dari warung, tanpa kita harus nutup warung pun kita udah bisa langsung pesan dan dapat barang. Mudah mengoperasionalkannya dan memudahkan saya dalam berbelanja.
tapi ada yang menjadi supply, gitu kan. Jadi mundur ke sebelah sana, maju ke sebelah sana gitu. Jadi sepanjang supply chain itu gimana sih rame-rame? Wah, kenceng banget itu kayak di luar. Terus mungkin yang kedua, lebih mumpung ada Pak Teten dan Mbak Putri sih di sini, dan ada Mbak Sinto juga, ada Mbak Neneng, ada apa namanya teman-teman yang lain. Sebetulnya kalau ada satu challenge selama ini ngerjain, ada yang udah 7 tahun, ada yang berapa tahun, request apa sih yang ingin diminta ke pemerintah dan ke teman-teman? Agak lama proses untuk memverifikasi seseorang masuk, misalnya petaninya masuk seperti apa, atau nelayan masuk seperti apa, itu semua masih dilakukan secara manual. Jadi yang VIDA coba bantu adalah bagaimana proses ini bisa dilakukan secara digital dalam waktu yang sesingkat-singkatnya, tapi tingkat keamanannya sama dengan apabila kita bertemu dengan orang secara face to face.
Excellencies, honorable speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to the B20 Digital ID Workshop, Scaling Trust in the Digital World. First, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Siska Becker, and tonight I have the utmost honor and privilege of being your MC for tonight's event. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to commence the proceedings, I would like to invite you all to please rise for the Indonesian national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Please be seated. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, this workshop organized by the B20 Secretariat in collaboration with the Ministry of Communication and Information, or Kominfo, and VIDA, which aims to advance the vision of a more inclusive digital economy. According to the Economy Southeast Asia 2021 report, it was revealed that in Indonesia, 21 million new digital users were connected online during the pandemic. As many as 72% of these new users come from non-urban areas. As the world increasingly moves online, there is a growing need to build and cultivate trust in the digital world. People need to trust the systems when making transactions digitally. Therefore, collaboration between the government and the private sector is needed to gain the public trust in the digital ecosystem. Synergy is needed to ensure that the digital space is one where one's privacy and personal data is protected and cybersecurity is guaranteed. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, to kickstart the whole series of our events tonight, we will now listen to the opening remarks that will be delivered by the Head of Research and Technology Agency of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Bapak Ilham Habibie. Unfortunately, Bapak Ilham Habibie cannot be here to attend the event. Therefore, his opening remarks will be delivered online. Let's all watch the opening remarks from Bapak Ilham Habibie.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum. This is Ilham Habibie speaking. I'm the head of the Agency for Research and Technology of the Indonesian Chamber and Commerce and Industry, or KADIN. And I'd like to welcome the distinguished speakers today. First of all, Mr. Teten Masduki, the Honorable Minister for Cooperative and Small and Medium Enterprises. Also, Dr. Arif Mustafa, the Deputy for Coordination and Information Communication of the Coordinating Ministry for Political, Legal and Security Affairs. Also, Mr. Iman Shah, Deputy Commissioner of the Financial Service Authority, or OJK in Indonesian language, for the Institute and Digital Finance part. Also, the other chairs and co-chairs of the B20 Indonesia Digitalization Task Force, Mr. Trinogani, the Executive Director of Digital Financial Innovation Group of Financial Service Authority, which is also OJK, and of course, all the other distinguished panelists, guests, and media that are present tonight. My apologies, I can't be here because of a conflict overlapping events that I have to attend. So therefore, I'm sending you this video in order to say a few words to the event, the dinner today, which is basically titled as Scaling Trust in the Digital World. One thing I'd like to say here is that it is something that we have experienced in the last years, not only because of the events of the pandemic, but also after that, since many people already are digitalized to that, but the effect of digitalization in our everyday life, be it in finance, be it in education, or in health, is actually enormous. Many people that were excluded from getting those services can now be included. So inclusion is a major aspect that we need to look at when we talk about digitalization. And for that, all of us need to have a presence in the digital world. We need to say, we as citizens of our individual countries, we need to have a digital identity in order to make sure that whoever receives or transfers those services and benefits is also the one who is getting that and who should be sending that. I mean, that is something very, very underlying. So digital identity is key for using digital technology to transform our services and contribution that we can give to one another or receive and send in a better way and include more people. And for that, digital identity is key, so we don't see misuse, or also we make sure that it really receives the ones that are needing it and that are supposed to receiving the services or whatever they need in terms of product. So basically, for that, we need to be trusting the authorities or the system that we are using in order to create that digital identity. Also, that is the system, the infrastructure for basically working with one another. So trust is a necessary component to basically embark upon the digitalization using digital identity as the core of, as a cornerstone of the system that enables all of us to basically have a better life, better quality of life. In the end, technology, including digital technology, is only useful if we can increase a better quality of life for more and more people from year to year. So let me just emphasize that the digitalization of our country and people, also in terms of identity, is very, very important. We have seen other countries already doing this quite swiftly, but I hope that Indonesia and other countries can do this also quite quickly. So at some point in time, we can say that all Indonesians have been digitalized in terms of their identity. And if we trust the system, and the system needs to also to be designed trustworthy, then we can really enjoy the services that we can obtain through digital technology in areas such as finance, health, education, and other social services that we can get from our government or from other sides. I think that's the main point that I want to say. Enjoy your dinner, and I hope to see you in a physical way the next time. Thank you, goodbye, and have a good evening.
We thank Mr. Ilham Habibi for his opening remarks. Next, we'd like to invite the Deputy Chair Integrity and Compliance Task Force, Bapak Paulo Kartajumena, to deliver his speech through a video. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome by video Bapak Paulo Kartajumena.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good evening to our speakers, panelists, and all attendees. First of all, I would like to greet some of our distinguished speakers. Bapak Tetet Masduki, Minister of Cooperatives and Small and Medium Enterprises. Bapak Iman Shah, Deputy Commissioner OJK Institute and Digital Finance of the Financial Services Authority, OJK, Bapak Triyono Gani, Executive Director of Digital Financial Innovation Group of the Financial Services Authority, OJK, Bapak Ririk Adriansyah, Chair of the B20 Indonesia Digitalization Task Force, and co-chairs of the B20 Digitalization Task Force. Good evening to all of you. It is an honor for me, as the Deputy Chair of the B20 Indonesia Integrity and Compliance Task Force, to be part of the B20 Digitalization Task Force side event, Scaling Trust in the Digital World. The pandemic has accelerated the shift for businesses to become more digital. Day-to-day activities, such as purchasing products and services through digital channels, have become more common, as has remote working arrangements for organizations and teams. This has the potential to make business more seamless than ever before. However, cyber criminals have also stepped up their game to exploit this shift to a more digital world. Therefore, Integrity and Compliance Task Force also highlights the importance of strengthening governance to mitigate exacerbated cybercrime risks as one of our main recommendations this year. As business and consumer behavior continues shifting to a more digital business model, we believe it is important to build business processes, systems, and infrastructure to mitigate cybercrime risks, to enable organizations of all sizes to mitigate and better respond to cybercrime, and to encourage better cooperation across stakeholders within and across borders in response to cybercrime. In a world that is increasingly relying on convenient and remote connectivity, accessing enterprise applications from multiple devices outside of the workplace has become the norm. If users present the correct credentials, they are trusted to access enterprise platforms, applications, and devices. However, this also presents a risk when combined with the large amount of personal information that is available online and with the vast amount of identity data that has been compromised in data breaches. Because identities can also so easily be stolen and faked, user accounts are put in jeopardy. Even as organizations amplify their defenses, cybercriminals continue to find new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. This has increased enterprises' exposure risk to data breaches, cybercrime, malware, and ransomware attacks. It is important to ensure all internal and client data is protected, not just behind a firewall, but with a detailed security policy that is enforced by all employees, partners, and stakeholders to avoid a potential business and financial disaster caused by cybercrime. Moving forward, enterprises will have to continue to take measures to ensure that access to all sensitive information is verified wherever information resides inside or outside network perimeter. Robust management of digital identities ensure that the right people have the right access to the right resource at the right time. Better incident response planning and execution is also one important area where more organizations now need to optimize their capabilities. Organizations need to look beyond preventive measures in their security assessments. This is why it is important to establish a good cybersecurity infrastructure to allow for businesses of all sizes to participate in the digital economy. Having a fast, efficient, and reliable way to verify digital identities is one of the important building blocks of this infrastructure. In closing, I would like to emphasize that cybersecurity is no longer just a technology issue, it is a business issue. Cybersecurity is one of the main risks for businesses of all sizes. Considering cyber risks in customer relationships, production processes, and supplier interactions help solidify the foundation of the cybersecurity practice in business. I do hope that this side event is able to build a shared knowledge base and define joint priorities in creating a digital ecosystem oriented towards trust and inclusivity to support the B20 and G20 priorities. Please enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
We thank Bapak Paolo Cartajumena for his speech. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the next agenda, we would like to invite our guests of honor to come on stage and have a group photo session. We kindly invite the Minister of Cooperatives and SMEs, Menteri Koperasi dan Usaha Kecil dan Menengah Republik Indonesia, yang terhormat Bapak Teten Mas Duki, to please come to the stage. We also invite the Deputy for Coordination of Information Communication and Apparatus of the Coordinating Ministry for Political, Legal, and Security Affairs, yang terhormat Bapak Marsda TNI Dr. Arif Mustafa MM. We also like to invite the Deputy Commissioner of OJK Institute and Digital Finance of Financial Services Authority, Bapak Imansyah. Mr. Yohanes Lukiman, B20 Digitalization Task Force Policy, please join us on stage. We also like to invite Niki Luhur, Chairman of VIDA, David Chin, Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group, or BCG, We also like to invite Jonathan Marskel, Senior Program Officer, Identification for Development, or ID4D Initiative, World Bank. Please join us on stage Triyono Gani, Executive Director of Digital Financial Innovation Group of Financial Services Authority, or Otoritas Jasa Keuangan. We also like to invite Yudi Hamka, President Director PT MNC Capital Indonesia Tbk and CTO MNC Group. Also, Howard Nugraha Gani, Chief Executive Officer Mitra Bukalapak. We also invite Pantro Pander Silitonga, Business Director Indonesia Finance Group. And last but not least, Sati B. Raswanto, Deputy Secretary General for and Head of the Personal Data Protection Task Force of the Indonesian FinTech Association. Now that we have everybody on stage, we'll be kind enough to open your mask if it's possible, so we can have the best picture of our guest of honors. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And now let's all look to the front, face the camera, and give us your best smiles in 3, 2, 1. Let's do it one more time, gentlemen, to ensure that we have the best picture and to commemorate this event. Once again, 3, 2, 1. There we have it. Let's put our hands together. Thank you very much to our guests of honor. Congratulations for this event. You all may return to your seats, but we kindly ask Bapak Teten Mas Duki to please remain on stage because you will be presiding for the next agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next keynote speech, we invite the Minister of Cooperatives and SMEs, Menteri Koperasi dan Usaha Kecil dan Menengah Republik Indonesia, yang terhormat Bapak Teten Mas Duki.
Selamat malam, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Yang saya hormati Bapak Marsda TNI, Dr. Arif Mustofa, Deputi Bidang Koordinator Kementerian Menko Polhukam, Bapak Samuel Pangerapan hadir, Bapak Irmansyah, Deputy Commissioner OJK, Bapak Paulo Kartajumena, tadi saya kira hadir secara virtual, Bapak Iwan Budiman Saputra, PMO Tim Task Force Digitalisasi B20, Bapak Triyono Gani, dan juga Direktur Prominent Company Indonesia, MNC, Telkomsel, Telkom, Bukalapak, Indonesia Financial Group. Maaf, suara saya agak serak, sering kebanyakan menyanyi ini. Lagu rock lagi. Pertama-tama satu kehormatan bagi saya untuk menyambut Anda semua dan menyampaikan pidato pada pembukaan Satuan Tugas Digitalisasi B20 Indonesia yang diselenggarakan oleh VIDA dengan tema Scaling Trust in the Digital World. Forum B20 ini memiliki misi memberikan rekomendasi kebijakan kepada pemerintah, dalam hal ini pemerintah G20, terkait pembangunan dan ekonomi khususnya gugus digitalisasi. Adaptasi transformasi digital menjadi kunci untuk UMKM agar lebih resilient. Tercatat 86% pelaku UMKM bergantung pada internet untuk menjalankan kegiatan usahanya. 73% memiliki akun pada loka pasar digital dan 82% berpromosi melalui internet. UMKM yang menyumbangkan 61% PDB Indonesia memiliki peran utama, terutama dalam peta ekonomi digital. Sebanyak 20,2 juta saat ini sudah terhubung pada ekosistem digital, platform e-commerce. Ini kalau pakai data IDEA bulan Agustus tahun ini. Sebanyak 1,6 juta produk UMKM sudah onboarding di dalam e-katalog belanja pemerintah pusat dan daerah. Dan sekarang sudah ada keharusan 40% belanja pemerintah dan daerah, pusat dan daerah harus membeli produk koperasi dan UMKM. Dan Pak Presiden akan terus mendorong semakin membesar. Jadi kita harus sudah siap dengan kebijakan substitusi impor. Karena tadi meskipun 20,2 juta UMKM kita sudah terhubung ke ekosistem digital, tapi yang dijual kebanyakan produk impor. Nah ini catatan kita kuat di marketnya, tapi kita lemah di produksi. Nah ini catatan bagi perbankan supaya lebih berani membiayai di sektor produksinya, nggak cukup warungnya saja. Ya. Sekarang udah banyak aplikasi digital yang menghubungkan ke market lokal maupun market nasional, tapi kita kurang mengurusi di sisi produksinya. Nah, digitalisasi tentu membantu UMKM dalam meningkatkan daya saing, mengembangkan usaha dan menjadi fondasi bagi Indonesia untuk mengoptimalkan potensi ekonominya. Nah, nilai pangsa pasar ekonomi digital kita prediksi ya, itu nilainya sekitar nanti 146 miliar US dollar dan hari ini ya dan bisa menjadi terbesar nanti di Asia Tenggara pada tahun 2025. Riset McKinsey menyatakan bahwa penjualan bisa meningkat hingga 60% jika melakukannya melalui e-commerce atau social commerce. Bahkan sekarang bukan hanya e-commerce, social commerce, tapi ada juga games commerce dan sebentar lagi ada TV commerce. Ya, ini nih pengumumannya dari MNC Group sudah memulai. Ya, saya kira akan menjadi kebangkitan TV yang hidup bukan lagi dari iklan tapi dari komersialisasi produk. Nah, kita berharap produk UMKM ya Pak yang dijual. Digital trust sangat penting dalam proses onboarding digital hingga mampu mencegah terjadinya penyalahgunaan, data penipuan dan lainnya. Nah, pemerintah sendiri sekarang sedang menyiapkan kebijakan digital ekonomi yang tujuannya untuk melindungi industri dalam negeri termasuk e-commerce dalam negeri, melindungi UMKM dan melindungi konsumen. Ini sebentar lagi saya kira sudah dalam proses pembahasan. Mudah-mudahan ini direspon positif oleh para pelaku e-commerce sebagai upaya untuk memperkuat ekonomi digital kita. Ya. Nah, digitalisasi juga mendorong tercapainya inklusi keuangan sehingga UMKM bisa mendapatkan manfaat secara real seperti kemudahan mengakses layanan keuangan dan pemahaman literasi digital yang lebih baik. Nah, saat ini perbankan masih menerapkan pendekatan konvensional, kolateral untuk mendapatkan akses pembiayaan. Tentu ini merupakan satu lelucon yang luar biasa karena UMKM itu apalagi yang mikro kecil nggak punya kolateral, nggak punya aset. Sehingga kami dengan Menko Ekonomi dan Menteri Keuangan sedang mendorong agar perbankan juga menggunakan teknologi, ya. Sekarang banyak aplikasi digital yang bisa membantu perbankan untuk melakukan credit scoring, ya, daripada hanya mengandalkan kolateral. Nah, kami dari Kementerian Koperasi juga sedang mendorong UMKM-nya juga punya bisnis plan dan juga menggunakan pencatatan secara digital. Sehingga nanti saya kira ini akan klop. Ya. Nah, ini yang saya kira akan mempercepat dan menjawab masalah pembiayaan untuk UMKM yang sekarang masih menjadi isu utama. Nah, pemerintah sendiri akan terus mendorong perbankan porsi kreditnya 30% untuk UMKM. Ya, ini di 2024. Saat ini kita perlu iri dengan Malaysia dan Thailand, di mana kredit perbankannya sudah jauh lebih besar untuk UMKM. Bahkan kalau kita lihat di Korea Selatan, 81% kredit perbankan untuk UMKM. Nah, kalau yang gede-gede kan nyarinya di pasar modal lah. Ya, kira-kira seperti itu. Itu kebijakan pemerintah yang saya kira sedang disiapkan. Karena itu KUR hari ini 373 triliun, tahun depan kita akan naikkan 460 triliun sampai nanti 2024 mencapai 30% kredit perbankan. Jumlah nilai pinjaman dalam fintech sekarang ini sudah mencapai 19,6 triliun. Tentunya ini juga mendukung target inklusi keuangan di tahun 2021. Kementerian Koperasi sangat mendukung. Kebetulan saya waktu di istana yang ikut mendukung fintech ini. Ya, saya ikutlah melahirkan kebijakan. Karena ini dengan pengadaan teknologi sekarang sampai 2 miliar fintech tanpa agunan. Ya, bank kita bikin regulasi sampai 100 juta tanpa agunan juga masih susah. Jadi kelihatan di sini antara modernisasi sama keterbelakangan. Mohon maaf. Pendekatan inklusi dari hulu ke hilir dan sinergi ekosistem digital merupakan fondasi utama transformasi digital UMKM untuk mencapai kesejahteraan bersama di era digital ini. Saya kira ini penting sekali untuk kita sinergikan, kita kolaborasikan saat ini. Karena itu kami berharap forum ini bisa menghasilkan rekomendasi dan inovasi yang baru dan mudah ditetapkan guna mendorong konektivitas universal, membangun ekonomi digital yang tangguh dan berkelanjutan, dan juga bisa mempromosikan standar keamanan teknologi yang memadai. Nah, saya sengaja membaca teks ini supaya tidak terlalu panjang pidatonya. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih banyak Teten Mas Duki untuk keynote speech-nya. Dipersilahkan untuk kembali ke tempat. Ladies and gentlemen, next I would like to invite the Director General of Applications and Informatics, Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Bapak Samuel Abriani Pangarapan, to deliver his speech through a video. So ladies and gentlemen, please focus your attention to the giant screen in front to welcome Bapak Samuel Abriani Pangarapan on video.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, salam sejahtera dan salam sehat bagi kita semua. Yang kami hormati dan banggakan Bapak Teten Mas Duki, Menteri Koperasi dan UKM Republik Indonesia, Bapak Imansyah, Deputi Komisioner OJK, Institut dan Keuangan Digital, Mr. Christian Gebara, Co-Chair B20 Digitalization Task Force, Bapak Paulo Kartajumena, Deputy Chair B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force, Bapak Tiono Gani, Kepala Eksekutif Grup Inovasi Keuangan Digital OJK, perwakilan KADIN Indonesia, serta para panelis, media, dan hadirin sekalian. Puji syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, karena atas limpahan rahmat dan berkatnya kita bersama dapat hadir dalam acara side event B20 Digitalization Task Force hari ini. Mewakili Sekretaris Jenderal Kementerian Kominfo, Ibu Mira Taiba, kami ingin menyampaikan permohonan maaf karena beliau tidak dapat hadir pada kesempatan kali ini. Namun, semangat beliau dalam mendukung percepatan transformasi digital nasional akan terus bersama kita semua. Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang terhormat, pandemi COVID-19 sudah mengubah aspek kehidupan kita sehari-hari. Sekarang ini, hampir semua kegiatan kita dapat lakukan secara online. Mulai dari belajar, bekerja, berbelanja, serta kegiatan-kegiatan lainnya. Dengan kata lain, ruang digital sudah menjadi bagian daripada realitas kehidupan kita semua. Google, Temasek, and Bain & Co. pada tahun 2021 melaporkan bahwa sejak pandemi COVID-19, jumlah pengguna layanan digital di Indonesia meningkat sebesar 21 juta pengguna. Survei ABGI tahun 2022 menyebutkan jumlah pengguna internet mencapai 210 juta pengguna atau setara dengan 77% dari total jumlah penduduk Indonesia. Sedangkan menurut We Are Social and Kepios, pengguna internet Indonesia melakukan aktivitas di ruang digital perharinya mencapai 8 jam 36 menit. Aktivitas ini menghasilkan peningkatan ekonomi digital kita di tahun 2021 itu 70 miliar US dollar dan ekspektasinya ini bisa mencapai 146 miliar US dollar. Ini bukan angka yang kecil. Ini juga lamanya durasi ini membuktikan bahwa makin banyak masyarakat kita beraktivitas di ruang digital. Bapak, Ibu hadirin yang berbahagia, meningkatnya aktivitas kita di ruang digital ini perlu didorong untuk membangun sistem yang handal dan terpercaya guna meningkatkan kepercayaan dalam beraktivitas di ruang digital, khususnya dalam kegiatan keuangan digital. Mengingat ada data pribadi yang terlibat dalam setiap transaksi dan akan melibatkan juga uang-uang masyarakat, untuk perlu pengamanan yang lebih dan juga membangun kepercayaan ini. Untuk menciptakan hal tersebut, salah satu upayanya adalah melalui penyelenggaraan sistem sertifikasi elektronik. Sertifikasi elektronik merupakan penanda bukti keabsahan bagi layanan digital untuk berikutnya dapat digunakan dalam autentikasi dokumen, transaksi, dan penerbitan identitas digital atau digital identity yang diharapkan dapat memberikan jaminan kepastian dan juga perlindungan hukum bagi masyarakat dalam bertransaksi. Digital identity adalah representasi digital dari suatu entitas sehingga entitas tersebut dapat dibedakan dalam suatu konteks digital. Dan identitas digital ini dapat digunakan dalam berbagai transaksi, seperti halnya melakukan pembelian barang secara online dan layanan keuangan digital lainnya. Adapun beberapa manfaat dari hadirnya digital identity bagi tata kelola negara adalah pertama, menjadi enabler untuk inklusivitas karena masyarakat dapat mengakses layanan sosial, kesehatan, dan keuangan maupun layanan-layanan pemerintahan lainnya. Kedua, meningkatkan penghematan melalui interoperabilitas data karena identitas digital yang sah dapat digunakan dalam transaksi lintas sektor bahkan lintas negara. Ketiga, meminimalisir potensi pemalsuan identitas karena standar identitas digital memiliki kriteria berlapis untuk memverifikasi identitas digital seseorang, seperti melalui kode unik perangkat, password, ataupun karakteristik biometrik. Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang terhormat, untuk mendukung realisasinya manfaat identitas digital di Indonesia, Kementerian Kominfo terus berperan aktif dalam membangun ekosistem identitas digital dan tata kelola transaksi elektronik nasional. Mulai dari penyiapan kerangka regulasi yang berkaitan dengan pertumbuhan identitas digital Indonesia, membangun ekosistem digital berbasis digital trust, dan juga melakukan penguatan SDM digital. Tentunya upaya ini tidak dapat kami kerjakan sendiri. Perlu kerjasama, perlu kolaborasi dengan berbagai pemangku kepentingan seperti kementerian lembaga lainnya dan juga sektor swasta. Oleh sebab itu, kami berharap agenda diskusi hari ini dapat memperkaya kasana kita semua dan juga mempererat kolaborasi dalam mendukung pembangunan ekonomi digital yang aman dan terpercaya dalam upaya percepatan transformasi digital nasional. Sebelum kami akhiri sambutan ini, apresiasi juga kami ucapkan kepada seluruh pihak yang mendukung terlaksananya kegiatan hari ini, khususnya kepada VIDA dan KADIN, serta seluruh pihak lainnya yang tidak dapat kami sebutkan satu persatu. Demikian yang dapat kami sampaikan. Selamat berdiskusi. Semoga Tuhan Yang Maha Esa senantiasa menyertai langkah kita bersama dalam memajukan Indonesia. Indonesia terkoneksi, semakin digital, semakin maju. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Om Santi Santi Om. Namo Buddhaya. Salam kebajikan.
We thank Bapak Samuel Abriani Pangarapan for his speech. Next, I'd like to invite the Deputy for Coordination of Information Communications and Apparatus of the Coordinating Ministry for Political, Legal, and Security Affairs, Bapak Marsda TNI, Dr. Arif Mustafa MM, to please come onto the stage and deliver his speech. Bapak Marsda TNI, Dr. Arif Mustafa MM, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang terhormat Menteri Koperasi dan Usaha Kecil dan Menengah Indonesia, Bapak Teten Mas Duki. Yang kami hormati Deputi Komisioner OJK, Bapak Iman Syah. Yang saya hormati para narasumber, panitia penyelenggara, para hadirin, Bapak Ibu sekalian yang berbahagia. Pertama-tama, marilah kita panjatkan puji syukur kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa karena atas rahmat dan ridhonya sehingga kita semua dapat hadir di sini dalam acara Scaling Trust in the Digital World. Dalam keadaan sehat walafiat tanpa kekurangan suatu apapun. Hadirin yang saya hormati, seperti yang telah kita ketahui bersama bahwa teknologi digital saat ini berkembang semakin pesat dan menjadikan hampir seluruh aktivitas kehidupan kita tergantung pada internet dan dilakukan secara online. Demikian juga dengan berkembangnya teknologi informasi dan komunikasi memberikan pengaruh yang signifikan terhadap pertumbuhan ekonomi digital Indonesia. Memperhatikan fenomena tersebut, pemerintah telah mencanangkan program transformasi digital nasional sebagai upaya mendorong adopsi teknologi digital yang semakin luas sehingga ekonomi digital Indonesia dapat semakin tumbuh dan berkembang. Terlebih pada masa pandemi COVID-19 yang telah mengalihkan banyak kegiatan manusia pada ranah fisik ke ranah digital. Dalam pelaksanaan transformasi digital, tentu diperlukan infrastruktur digital yang memadai sehingga berbagai aplikasi dan konten yang dibuat dapat meningkatkan produktivitas sosial dan ekonomi yang dapat diakses dengan mudah serta dimanfaatkan oleh masyarakat secara luas. Hal ini sejalan dengan arahan Bapak Presiden yaitu mempercepat perluasan akses, peningkatan infrastruktur digital, dan penyediaan layanan internet bersamaan dengan akselerasi transformasi digital melalui peta jalan digital Indonesia tahun 2021-2024 yang mencakup 4 sektor strategis yaitu infrastruktur digital, pemerintahan digital, ekonomi digital, dan masyarakat digital. Pemerintah telah melakukan berbagai inovasi kebijakan untuk mendorong percepatan pembangunan infrastruktur digital, yaitu dengan menerbitkan Undang-Undang Nomor 11 Tahun 2020 tentang Cipta Kerja, beserta peraturan turunannya, termasuk PP Nomor 46 Tahun 2021 tentang Pos, Telekomunikasi, dan Penyiaran, serta Peraturan Menteri Kominfo Nomor 5 Tahun 2021 tentang Penyelenggaraan Telekomunikasi. Selain itu, pada tanggal 20 September 2022, DPR telah mensahkan Undang-Undang Perlindungan Data Pribadi. Hal ini tentunya dapat menjadi payung hukum sektor digital yang memadai bagi kemajuan bangsa dan negara. Hadirin yang saya hormati, saat ini dunia dihadapkan dengan perkembangan digital ekonomi yang semakin pesat, sehingga ekonomi digital dapat menjadi motor penggerak investasi di Indonesia di tengah perlambatan ekonomi global. Dengan jumlah penduduk yang sangat besar dan daya beli yang terus meningkat pesat, Indonesia menjadi tempat yang sangat menarik untuk investasi pada infrastruktur ekonomi digital. Upaya pemerintah dalam percepatan ekonomi digital memerlukan partisipasi dari sektor swasta. Oleh sebab itu, peluang bagi swasta untuk berperan dalam pembangunan infrastruktur digital sangat terbuka lebar. Saat ini merupakan era disrupsi, di mana digital ekonomi sudah masif di dunia global, sehingga tidak ada bisnis yang sukses tanpa dorongan teknologi digital. Karena itu, hal ini menjadi momentum emas untuk segera mengakselerasi transformasi digital. Terkait hal tersebut, peran Kemenkopolhukam sesuai dengan tugasnya akan memberikan dukungan serta mendorong kementerian lembaga yang terkait untuk melakukan inisiatif dalam pengembangan teknologi digital, khususnya untuk mempercepat pertumbuhan perekonomian di Indonesia. Hadirin yang saya banggakan, industri keuangan digital berpotensi menjadi sektor unggulan bagi ekonomi digital di Indonesia. Proyeksi ini didorong oleh sejumlah peluang dan tantangan yang akan dihadapi industri masa kini. Dengan berbagai manfaat, keragaman produk dan layanan keuangan yang dimiliki berpotensi menjadi sektor unggulan ekonomi digital di masa mendatang. Namun juga akan menghadapi tantangan terbesar, yaitu digital trust. Pelaku industri digital harus mampu menjamin keamanan data pengguna, karena hal tersebut akan memperbesar dampak positif terhadap keberlangsungan industri, terutama kepercayaan publik dalam menerima layanan penyelenggaraan sistem elektronik. Melihat pentingnya untuk segera mewujudkan identitas digital yang aman di Indonesia, maka kerjasama pemerintah dan dunia usaha menjadi sangat diperlukan. Hal tersebut terkait dalam pengembangan platform digital yang nyaman dan dapat melindungi data warga negara, serta akan dapat meningkatkan kemudahan akses masyarakat ke layanan keuangan, kesehatan, pendidikan, dan layanan pemerintah secara elektronik. Sudah tentu hal ini akan membutuhkan standar interoperabilitas yang jelas untuk memastikan sebanyak mungkin layanan dapat diakses dan inklusif. Untuk itu sangatlah penting manajemen identitas digital yang bertanggung jawab guna mendukung privasi dan keamanan data pengguna, serta memberikan kendali atas data pribadi melalui mekanisme persetujuan dan otorisasi, sehingga tercipta digital trust dalam menggunakan sumber data lintas batas yang otoritas hingga memaksimalkan akses dan inklusivitas. Di samping pada saat yang sama, tetap memperhatikan segala risiko keamanan cyber secara global. Hadirin yang saya hormati, demikian sambutan saya, semoga kegiatan ini dapat berjalan lancar dan dapat memberikan dukungan yang positif terhadap kemajuan ekonomi digital guna meningkatkan kesejahteraan masyarakat di Indonesia. Sekian dan terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi 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 Om.
Terima kasih Marsda TNI Dr. Arif Mustafa MM for your speech. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, I would like to invite the Deputy Commissioner of OJK Institute and Digital Finance of Financial Services Authority, Bapak Imansyah, to deliver his speech. Bapak Imansyah, the floor is yours.
Terima kasih. Tadi kami mencermati penyampaian pidato tadi Pak Ilham Habibie dan rekan dari KADIN menyampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris. Kemudian izin Pak Menteri, Pak Menteri dan juga Pak Sam dan Pak Arif tadi menyampaikan pidato dalam bahasa Indonesia. Karena 2 lawan 3 saya melengkapi Pak Menteri dan Bapak Ibu sekalian, saya menyampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris supaya 3 lawan 3 jadi adil. Thank you. Honorable guests and speakers, Bapak Teten Masuki, Minister of Cooperatives and Small Medium Enterprises, Bapak Dr. Arif Mustafa from the Coordinating Minister of Political, Legal and Security Affairs, Bapak Yohanes Lukman, B20 Digitalization Task Force Policy Manager, Bapak Ririk Ardiansah, Digitalization Task Force Chair, Bapak Haryanto T. Budiman, Integrity and Compliance Task Force Chair, my colleagues Pak Niki Luhur, Chairman of Verified Identity for All, the one that hosted our event this evening, VIDA, my colleagues from the head of the group of Digital Finance Innovations of OJK, Pak Triyono Gani, and for sure all speakers, agencies, industry, and all attendees as well. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good evening. At first, on behalf of Chairman of Indonesia Financial Supervisory Authority or OJK, Bapak Mahendra Srigar, I would like to extend our deepest appreciations for inviting OJK to this event. Indeed, the chairman intended to come and share his insight personally in this event. However, due to another agenda, allow me to share some key messages to how OJK view the initiative to build a digital ecosystem in the financial sector in particular, and also how that areas will link into digital finance innovations, in particular how we are addressing the issue of verifying identity, and then will be linked into as well to the what we have right now, the platform that link into KYC, the regime that very much link again to how we are having these terrorist financing and also combating terrorist financing and combating anti-money laundering. As we all know, as of today, we also have a national agenda that Indonesia want to be a full member of the financial task force. That will be allow us to become a full membership that we are addressing very much how we comply with the standard on these anti-money laundering as well as the combating against terrorism financings. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, in the last decade and so, technological advance has been developing rapidly and has taken us all from traditional business processes to digital service delivery. And we witnessed that changes into our behavior and our daily activities when we were in the era of COVID-19. And I think that still happens as of today. And this, for sure, has pushed the industry, in particular financial sector, to continue to innovate their products and services to meet customer expectations, changing the shape of the industry itself, including in the financial sector. And then, by utilizing technology, financial service can be delivered without the need for physical face-to-face contact between the companies and the customer. And this results in the emergence of the so-called financial technology of fintechs. I recall when I was in the previous institutions that, when we have these kind of like incentives to the financial sector, in particular banking sector, so we are very much allow them to open their branches in the eastern part of Indonesia. So that's really one of the idea when we're talking about the anti-money laundering, and also it becomes like a challenges for them as well when they have to open their branches in the eastern part of Indonesia. But as of today, when we have this fintech, I think that so much more convenience for the financial sector, in particular the banking sector, to open branches everywhere in Indonesia, but without allowing them to also come up with the physical presence in that areas. Talking about fintechs, I think I also want to recall as well when we have these first regulations on the P2P lending in 2016. So, but as of today, as September 2022, there will be 100 P2P lending registered and all licensed, as well as 11 securities equity crowdfunding fintechs licensed by OJK. Looking to that number, in particular for the P2P lending, we do have still now the moratorium policy. So we are not allowing to open more P2P lending. So maybe everybody just, imagine if we still allowing to open new P2P lending, there will be more than 102 P2P lending here in Indonesia. And then there must be a lot of challenges as well for us as supervisors and regulators to conduct a very proper regulations and supervisions on the P2P lending. But anyway, when we engage with the P2P lending, there's still a lot of regulation, there's still obligations that we impose into this P2P lending, and hopefully P2P lending can contribute more for the economic recovery and our further development in our domestic economy. Aside from that, fintechs, other than I mentioned before, but P2P lending as well as on the securities equity crowdfundings, we have also some that we call them as the digital financial innovations. And we do have that because we are allowing as well anybody want to run this kind of business as according to our POJK 13/2018. And this, I think, we have right now currently 87 digital financial innovations recorded in OJK, and those numbers grouped into 15 business model clusters, such as innovative credit scoring, aggregator finance planner, insurtech, as well as eKYC. So I think that number is expected to grow in the future by looking at the digital trend, which has been boosted even more by the new normal that resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, which is, I think that platform will be much online, and smartphone-based business model will become even higher in the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think somebody already talking about this law on the data protections. So I think there's a lot of ideas that in the future we are talking against when we are talking about this eKYC model business platform, and then this new law issued by the government in September 2022. So then in the future, I think the issue of customer protections will be also very much become an issue that we have to tackle together. So then I think when we have this kind of infrastructure already, we have the regulators, we have the law already, then I think fintech innovations will be have more potential usage of enhancing market and also improving services to the benefit of customer. So why? Because from the first time, you can see that the benefits embedded into the fintechs will increase efficiency, lower transaction costs, improve compliance, enhance transparency, as well as these enhance analytic and predictive ability, as well as more efficient flow of capital for productive use. I think we all agree with the minister said something that utilizing the fintechs comparing to the banks, where the banks still requiring collateral, but there's no such things when it is engaged coming from the fintechs platform. So I think that's really one advantage that we can utilize in the future. How is the scale, the efficiency, and the lower transaction costs, they're very common attached to the fintech innovations, will also offer significant promises in promoting financial inclusions by utilizing new technologies and innovations which allow platform to scale rapidly across the country and beyond borders. On the other side, ladies and gentlemen, I think we still have a huge gap for ourselves as regulators to ability to keep pace with innovations, risk mitigations, regulations toward innovations, limited skill regulatory personnel, and the element of trust between the fintech and the consumers. So I don't want to elaborate more on such issues, but I think we have to come up like a balance, a right balance between the risk and the innovations, and also about the scale of the fintech players as well as the regulators. And at the end, we have to aware as well with the customer protection as well. So then I think all in all, that something that we try to develop ourselves, and we try to come up ourselves as the new regulator and supervisor towards a new framework as a 21st century supervisions, which are expected to oversee the growth of digital finance industry effectively. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, so accordingly, as we are labeling ourselves becoming a 21st century supervisor, so we have to, escalate our ability to conduct supervisions, effective supervisions, but at the same time, we have to facilitate the market enhancing innovations and ensuring integrity of both players in the market. So I think that's the one that VIDA will assist us on how we are, having a very proper and very innovative ecosystems that we can go together and build confidence and strengthening the public trust. So, and then by doing such things, I think public or consumer of our platform, digital platform, have the confidence on their assets, on their data and privacy that will be also be safeguarded not only by the law but also by the fintech players and also for sure for the supervisor as well. So I think when we see all those things, all those and being connected together, so it is like an assurance for us and a guarantee that we going to have a very good ecosystems on how we are utilizing the financial sector, digitalization in financial sector, So I think we do have right now, when we have this cluster on eKYC, we have also that eKYC itself, we have also digital ID and e-signatures that all together will have something that will enable us to verify user data, perform authentications and append signature digitally, will have built a trusted mechanism prior to using the digital platform, and such will provide a sense of security while performing digital transactions. Distinguished guests and speakers, I don't want to take much more on your time, but hopefully that OJK will play its role on how we are facilitating the development of these fintech development, including also the cluster on the eKYC. So through our regulatory sandbox, for sure. So then I think accordingly we can have a very notable efforts to put forward timely and proportionate regulatory and supervisory approach to managing financial risk arising from fintechs. To conclude my remarks, I think it is evident that fintech industry and digitalized financial sector will bring a lot of benefits, especially in tackling the outstanding issues in the finance sector. But at the same time, we want to have also that they can guarantee us how we are talking about the trust in the finances, in the digital financial sector, and such will be supported by the idea on the digital ID and also the eKYC in particular. So that's what we can have, right? I can say at this very precious event. I believe that cooperations from all parties will be just as critical, and I'm very optimistic that as well all work hand in hand, responsible digitalized finance sector will be maintained, and subsequently will stimulate our economic recovery and develop our economy in more sustainable way in the future. With that, I would end my speech here and wishing you an enlightening discussion in this event. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Bapak Imansyah, for your keynote speech. You may return to your seat. We truly appreciate Bapak Teten Mas Duki's attendance in this event. Thank you very much, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with our agenda tonight, we're going to have a very short coffee break, which you can use to recharge your energy. The culinary team from Ayana Hotel will present you with food and snacks. And you can also use this opportunity to refill your cups of coffee and tea. But we kindly expect you to please stay on your seats, because after this very short coffee break, we will continue with the much awaited panel discussions. But for now, please enjoy your coffee break. We'll be back soon. Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention, please? We are about to continue with the event, so we kindly ask you to please return to your seats with your tea and coffee. Finger food and snacks have been distributed by the culinary team of Ayana Hotel. You are more than welcome to enjoy them as we proceed to the next agenda of the event, the panel discussions. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, again, we'd like to invite you all to please take your seats. We are about to continue with our event this evening. We hope that you have recharged your energy. You are feeling re-energized with the tea and coffee and also with the snacks and finger food that has been distributed and prepared meticulously by the culinary team of Ayana Hotel. And now it is time to continue with our agenda. Now, before we go to the much-awaited panel discussion right here at the B20 Digital ID Workshop, Scaling Trust in the Digital World, I would like to invite you all to first focus your attention to the big screen in front of us and to watch this following video. Please enjoy.
Di zaman yang serba digital ini, semua lini kehidupan dituntut untuk bertransformasi menjadi seamless dan praktis. Keamanan identitas diperlukan untuk mendukung mobilitas sehari-hari. Pembukaan akun rekening bank digital dari verifikasi sampai autentikasi merupakan salah satu contoh penggunaan identitas digital. Selain itu, tanda tangan digital digunakan untuk memenuhi kebutuhan keamanan digital dalam bidang investasi, terutama pada saat pembukaan akun di aplikasi investasi. Bahkan kemudahan dan jaminan keamanan dalam verifikasi dan autentikasi identitas pengemudi ojek online. Fitur autentikasi merupakan kebutuhan yang sangat mendasar demi mendukung kelancaran operasional sehari-hari. VIDA hadir memberikan solusi identitas digital yang aman, cepat, dan mudah. Kapan saja, di mana saja, untuk siapa saja.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause for that video we just saw together, and a big shout out to VIDA team, of course. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's start the first panel discussion. The topic of the first panel discussion is promoting digital trust, compliance, and market adoption, and digital transformation for underdeserved communities. And now I would like to invite Bapak Yohanes Lukiman, B20 Digitalization Task Force Policy, to be our moderator for the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our moderator, Bapak Yohanes Lukiman, and the stage is yours.
What an honor and a pleasure it is for me to be here. Thank you to my good friend Pak Niki Luhur for hosting the event. I'd like to introduce one by one the speakers now. We have someone dialing in from Singapore. His name is Kweksin Kwok. Kweksin, if you could.
Can you all hear me?
Clearly audible. Hi, how are you, Kweksin?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me again. Yep. Happy to be here, and good evening to everyone.
Fantastic. Looking forward to hearing your comments. Next, we have Jonathan Marskel. Please take the stage. Next, of course, we have Nicky Luhur, the CEO of VIDA. And last but not least, leading the knowledge partner on the digitalization task force, David Chin from BCG. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, before we start introducing the speakers one by one, I think it's important for us to establish the context first about why we're talking about digital ID here today. Well, in the digitalization task force of the B20, we identified the policy outcomes, which were so eloquently also mentioned by Pak Menteri Mas Teten Mas Duki. But those outcomes need something that's probably not very sexy to talk about, but it's equally as important as anything else, which is the plumbing, which is the infrastructure, which are the basic building blocks of how a digital economy can become truly inclusive. And one of those building blocks, which we identified in the B20 Digitalization Task Force, is digital ID. So do not underestimate the importance of digital ID and verifying who someone really is in the digital economy to the future of this country, and indeed the future of the digital global economy. So without further ado, let me introduce one of our speakers, Kweksin Kwok. It's a real privilege to have him on the panel today. He is currently the Chief Digital Officer of Raffles Health Group, but previously he was the former Senior Director for National Digital Identity in Singapore, and in his former role, Kweksin was a leader in GovTech and also worked with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. At GovTech, he oversaw Singapore's National Digital Identity Program and was responsible for strategy, implementation, operations, and adoption. Thank you, Kweksin, for joining us. Next, I'd like to introduce Nicky Luhur, the Group CEO of VIDA. He is a co-founder and former chairman of the FinTech Association of Indonesia and has worked with regulators and financial institutions. He is also the founder and former chairman of Kartuku, the leading independent payments infrastructure provider in Indonesia, and also former special advisor to the Indonesian Minister of ICT. Welcome, Pak Nicky. Next, I'd like to introduce David Chin. We've been working together a lot over the past year. He's a partner and managing director in BCG. He leads the strategy practice in Southeast Asia, a core member of the TMT practice, people and operations and global advantage as well. He's also leading BCG's collaboration with the B20 in the Digitalization Task Force as a knowledge partner. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Marskell, Senior Program Officer with the World Bank, leading the Identification for Development Initiative, or ID4D. He is responsible for leading digital ID and civil registration, financing, and technical assistance projects all around the world, including East Asia, Pacific, South Asia, and East Africa. So thank you, esteemed panelists. I think the quality of a panel discussion depends on the knowledge of the panelists on the panel, and it's great that we're going to have a great discussion. So this is going to be a bit of a free-flow discussion. I don't want it to be too stiff. So we'll start with asking a question to Pak Nicky, but then after that, if any of the other panelists feel like they want to give some input on that, please do so after he's finished answering the question. So Nicky, in your position as the chairman of VIDA, VIDA as a CA rooted under the prevailing regulations of Kemenkominfo continues to evangelize about the importance of secure digital identity. But as was mentioned before by some of the speakers, we need a standard. We need standardization. So what kind of secure digital identity should become the industry standard in this country, in Indonesia? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Pak Hans. I think from my perspective, the global standards exist. And in fact, thanks to friends at the World Bank and Jonathan in particular, he's written quite a few about these standards globally. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Whether it's starting from cybersecurity practices, and we can refer to the W3C Council, which is something that, again, World Bank builds off of those. There's clear standards that are available that not only are giving that level of assurance that this is going to be secure, that this is going to scale, but more importantly, that it's going to be interoperable. Because it's not just about having a secure system, it's about making sure that the use cases and the interoperability to be able to connect platforms, global platforms, local platforms, and hopefully at some point countries and states together. That is where I believe that the opportunity really lies with digital identity. So I think that's where there are a number of standards, and even the most recent, this is not just about standards in financial services, which the IMF is very proactive in driving the anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing through the Financial Action Task Force. But beyond that, we also look at the recent, during the pandemic, even the innovation that was driven through the World Health Organization around vaccine certificates. That is also another form of digital ID, and smart vaccine certificates were promoted then. So the beautiful part is there are a lot of standards. I think the area that we need to make sure is that there's a commitment to drive and implement those standards and to have everyone operating in that same playing field.
Thanks, and that's one of the reasons why B20 really exists. We want the world's G20, or the biggest 20 economies in the world, to be on the same page. Interoperability, if not harmonization of these standards, is extremely important. Otherwise, we'll remain a balkanized G20, and that's something that nobody wants. But let me move on to the next question, Pak Niki. I think everyone in the room here is aware that in the past 12, 24 months, there have been an unusual amount of data leaks in this country. An uncomfortable amount of data leaks. A huge amount of data has been cracked and is now out in the open. And we also heard from several speakers before that trust, assurance is a key component of getting people on board with the digital economy. People need to be convinced of the security of letting their digital identity out in the wild before they are willing to participate. So how can CAs like VIDA play their part in ensuring cybersecurity?
I think the long story short is that certificate authorities can play a role in taking a lot of the complexity of information security, of privacy management, of being able to manage complex laws around personal data protection, and being able to also look at it from a cybersecurity perspective in terms of authentication and assurance levels. But at the end of the day, it's about making it convenient. Otherwise, it won't be adopted. And that's where I think at VIDA we believe of building out identity as a service. And same way that we now have cloud computing as a service. I think that's really the way it needs to be evolving, that we hopefully have a few players that with strong, of course, support, and we're very thankful to have a lot of support from the government and public-private partnerships to be able to enable this kind of connectivity and at the same time be able to give that level of legal assurance as well as that cybersecurity assurance. Data leaks are a problem for all of us because it undermines the trust of the entire ecosystem. So I think it's really important, whether it's at least being able to make sure that your endpoint security, how you authenticate, how you allow someone to grant access to their account is really stepped up and beyond a simple username and password. Passwords are really obsolete. So being able to adopt intuitive technologies, whether it's face recognition or biometrics, that are very easy to use and at the same time secure, being able to combine that is, I think, going to be the key to managing some of these cybersecurity risks.
Thanks, Pak Niki. Pak David, we'll move on and ask you a question. I think this is a nice segue because yes, people will lose their trust in the digital economy and their participation in it with these data leaks, but a fundamental problem in Indonesia is that a lot of people aren't even aware of the digital economy, of digital identity as a key building block. I think I spoke with my friend, the CEO of MNC Capital, that once we go to rural areas, people don't accept QRIS, people don't know what digital identity is. So we have a problem here. Digital identity is intangible. It's a foreign concept to a lot of people. On the other hand, it's growing in importance and the industry is thriving. How can Indonesia, what can we do to truly leverage our potential in this area?
Yeah, I think, okay. So I think first and foremost, right, I think digital identity is a very fast growing market. Right? Actually, based on our study, it's gonna hit about 28 billion US dollars by next year, growing at about 18% CAGR year after year. What is interesting is actually it's almost like a dichotomy, I would say, right? Because on one hand, you know, customer says they want their data to be secure, right? But on the other hand, we also actually do a study and then notice on average, a customer has about 40 different accounts or 40 different services and applications, each with their own username and password, which is a big burden for the customers to remember. But most of the time, they actually use the same name and password, right? On the other hand, the businesses and the customer-facing organization, as I think Nikki mentioned, they all want to increase the protection, right? But the sad truth is actually, if you look at the rise of the cyber attack, it's actually continue to increase year after year. It's not declining, right? So I think the key is actually how do you actually create something that is customer-centric, not putting too much burden on the customer side, but it's relatively secure, and ideally the customers do not have so much burden, right? At the moment, a lot of the authentication method actually put a lot of burden on the customers, right? They need to, either bring like multi-factor authentication, right? You need to actually come up with like very strong passwords, 16 digits, combination of many different things. But in reality, actually there are a lot more, I think Nikki already mentioned this, right? Proliferation of new type of data, right? Biometric, device ID, customer behavior when they are browsing, that actually we can actually help to use to actually implement some of this. Yeah.
I think the last part of your answer sort of segues nicely to the next question that I want to ask. There are new trends in establishing who you are online.
Yeah.
So what are some of these trends in digital identity products that we need so that the digital ecosystem, the digital economy in Indonesia can thrive?
Yeah, I think if we step back a little bit and try to take a bigger question, right? Why maybe the adoption is not as wide as we hope in Indonesia, right? I think for me, all the active ecosystem players need to take part in building this, right? I would probably say there are 4 big stakeholders. One is, of course, the government itself, right? I mean, if you look at example from government in Estonia or India or Singapore, right, they are quite well advanced on this. Right? I mean, India, for example, they built Aadhaar and the India government stacks, right? And that actually drive the businesses, not only the citizens, to actually move very, very fast into this territory, right? But then if you look at, so that's on the government side. If you look at then the providers themselves, right? Maybe like including VIDA, right? Then the question is how you can actually come up with a solution that is customer-centric and actually easy for people to actually use, yeah? I think, like if you try to log in using your face recognition or you using your thumbprint, it's actually very easy. You don't have to remember your 16-digit password, right? So I think some of those things need to be done. And then lastly, actually, if you look at the citizens themselves, I think they need to be aware. And maybe the practical solution is for different kind of services and application, depending on the sensitivity of the data, etc. Maybe the level of solution doesn't have to be exactly the same. Yeah. And lastly, I think the education needs to come in. Yeah. I think as you rightly say, I think the problem, not the problem, I would say, right? Maybe the opportunity. Indonesia has like 285 million people, right? Even the biggest application in Indonesia, you look at the monthly active users, no one actually has more than 70 or 80 million. Yeah, so the truth is digital literacy actually needs to be pushed in a much bigger way. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak David. I think it's always a happy moment for a moderator when I see an alignment coming up, right? And there will be increased security, but with increased security comes increased complexity. But in the end, the customer doesn't care about that on the back end, right? They want it to be easy. They want it to be consistent. They want the journey to be frictionless, and that's really the key for widespread adoption. So thank you, Pak David. Next, I'd like to ask you a question, Quixin. So obviously, you've had extensive experience in what is probably one of the world's marquee use cases for digital identity in Singapore with SingPass. It's become Singapore's, I think, prime digital identity verification provider, and it's helped millions of Singaporeans access thousands of public and private services. What were the challenges that you faced when implementing this digital ID, and are there still any challenges that you perceive exist even with this advanced state that it is right now?
Thank you for the question. I think the challenge that we face is not very much different from what many other countries are facing. Perhaps as a smaller country, we can be a little bit more nimble and move things faster. All right, but I think fundamentally the challenges are pretty much similar. I'll share a couple. For example, we talk about adoption, driving adoption. And certainly one of the things that we do not want to end up having is a white elephant that we spend millions of dollars trying to provide digital identity for our citizens, and it becomes not relevant or not useful to them. So driving adoption becomes one of the key things that we focus on at the very beginning. And in order to address that, we take what we call a platform approach, okay, in developing this national digital identity, and that it is not just a single product kind of identity. It's not just SingPass, but we try to provide other trust services on the same platform. For example, MyInfo, Verify, digital signing, face verification, authorization, both for individual as well as for corporate users. That means to address both the natural identity as well as the legal identity. So with more more features, more users, okay, it becomes more relevant, okay, and it helps to drive the adoption. And during the pandemic, we also extend our platform to support some of the COVID measures, such as safe entry for contact tracing, as well as vaccination passports, okay, for overseas travel. So that increased that value proposition for individuals and business. But the other thing that I think is very helpful for us to drive the adoption was to identify key use cases, okay, for our key industry. For example, for financial institutions, we wanted to try to solve one of their biggest challenges, which is to support their eKYC of their customers. And we work very closely with our central bank, MAS, to address initial concerns, okay, from all these industry players to get the buy-in, and also identifying all these use cases within these different sectors, okay, and getting the regulatory agencies to support them, all right, and to even make regulation changes, all right, in order to support them. All right. So today, MyInfo handles more than 80 million transactions a year, okay, for helping to do eKYC, and that helps reduce transactions of business by 80%, and cost savings of between $10 to $50 per transaction. So taking that at face value, that represents several billions of economic value add, okay, just from that single service alone. All right. The other challenges that we face, as mentioned multiple times, okay, is the ongoing efforts to counter fraud as well as cybersecurity attacks. I must say that no solutions in the world today are immune to such risk, and the effort to continue to prevent, minimize, detect, protect, and recover from such incidents will determine the digital trust that it can establish. And on our part, what we try to do is to layer multiple layer of authentication, multi-factor, all right, in order to increase that trust, not for every transactions, okay, but for specific transactions, or when we detect that certain anomalies, okay, is happening for the transactions, for example, using a different device or using a device from a different place, all right, that will trigger a additional authentication. All right. And fourth challenge that we face is really on the privacy considerations. While there are strong supporters of digital identity, there are also voices of concerns, okay, that this may undermine individual privacy when government or big tech have access to our digital footprint. But don't get me wrong, privacy considerations are important, but it often gets overplayed and also misunderstood due to fear and lack of understanding. So addressing privacy considerations is actually a two-pronged approach, okay, of ensuring solutions are designed with privacy in mind upfront, and also ensuring that there are sufficient public communications and education provided. So these are some of the challenges that we face and we continue to face some of these challenges.
Thanks, Kweksen. I think, sorry, did you want to add, David? One of the things that you highlighted is quite important. We don't want to build a white elephant. I think one of our esteemed ministers, Bu Sri Mulyani, has been very emphatic on this point. In fact, she's been pushing government agencies to amalgamate projects that are similar in nature. So yeah, we have to be very careful with the public dollar, so to speak. But the second point that you mentioned, I think, aligns quite neatly with Pak David, which is use cases are very important, but the education about those use cases are very important as well. And in Singapore, I think there was massive, wide-scale education about SingPass, about safe entry, and I don't think the success of those use cases can be separated from the mass-scale education that occurred. And so actually, I think in the rollout of your solution and the multiple use cases there are perhaps some lessons to be learned from that rollout for Indonesia. So how can Indonesian digital identity players learn from maybe your what you did right, what you did wrong, and how can we broaden the use of digital identity from your experience?
Yep. I think one of the things when we started implementing our digital identity, even way back in early 2000, okay, was to try to study what other people are doing. And one of the key lessons we learned, okay, is that there's no two countries that are similar. All right, there are differing geopolitical conditions, okay, different users, different considerations of rural versus urban users. So to first answer your question, I don't think that there is a one size fit all, okay, and that there are perhaps also individual lessons that can be learned, but there's no one size fit all for everything. Perhaps one thing that we can share is how we work with the industry, all right, in order to drive, okay, some of this education and some of this adoption, all right, because you mentioned about we do a lot of communications to our end users, but not all these communications are done by us. Okay, we actually partner with our industry, the banks, the insurance companies, okay, etc., to try to educate, okay, the public as well as the companies, okay, to drive those adoption. And I think that that is important. And the second thing that probably works for us, not sure whether it works in the Indonesian context, is that we do have quite a commitment to have mandates, okay, for government agencies, okay, to adopt a common identity systems, even way back to 2003. And I think that was one of the key reasons, okay, why our digital identity was probably more successful, okay, in the last couple of years. And in the last couple of years, I would say that we even restructure our organization such that GovTech reports directly to a panel of ministers, all right, directly to the Prime Minister office, okay, and have a lot of the mandate for us to drive some of this alignment across government agencies. So that helps, okay, us in pushing out all these common platforms that serves not only the government but the industry as well.
Thanks, Kweksen. I think that brings us nicely to our last panelist, Jonathan. Now, it was mentioned before that, you know, there's a tension. For digital identity solutions to be truly successful, they need to be highly customized, locally sensitive. Yet at the same time, like Pak Niki said, we need to make sure that, you know, kalau bahasa Indonesia, jangan aneh sendiri. We don't want the solution just to be idiosyncratic, right, and not compatible with other countries. So as a global standard setter, Jonathan, how would you characterize a robust digital identity identification system? And maybe let's just start with the basics. Why is digital ID important?
Sure. Thank you very much, and thanks to the organizer for the invitation to join.
I have to say from the outset, when I started working on digital identity in Indonesia in 2018, this was a very foreign concept. And now to see the discourse to have grown to where it is now, and to see all this debate and all these stakeholders getting around this topic, I think it's a very phenomenal accomplishment. Why is ID important? Well, so the World Bank, we're a development institution. Our interest is shared prosperity and ending extreme poverty. Now you may ask, how is ID linked to that? Well, for example, if you look at how each country has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic with social protection payments, we've studied how about 80 countries performed. The countries that used digital IDs, digital databases, and digital payments, they reached, on average, around 51% of their population. Those who didn't reached around 15%, right? The challenge really of being resilient, of adapting, is really addressed once you have what we call digital public infrastructure. It's not just identity, it's payments and data exchange. If you have those three things, then you're very much set to build all the applications on top: healthcare, social protection, digital government services, e-commerce, etc. Because ultimately, everything is about the flow of data, the flow of money, and the flow of trust. And that's what these three things solve. Now, coming to your question, the World Bank, we're not a standard setter, but we do work with a lot of standards bodies, and we do our best to publish research and to help produce norms. Coming to the point that Pak Niki mentioned, the standards exist, and what's important to note is that a lot of these standards are global, so they need to take into account the minimum threshold for any country. I like to always highlight the example of names in passports. Now, where I come from in Australia, we have surname, first name, optional middle name. What happens when you have an Indonesian who turns up with a single name? He becomes Muhammad, right? Or whatever it might be. I know this because when I went to high school in Sydney, we had 3 Indonesians all with the same name twice, right? And if you look in the Indonesian passport, it doesn't say surname, middle name, first name. It just says name. And if you look at the ICAO standards that define passports, it allows for that. In other words, the standards that are being developed, including some that Pak Niki mentioned, for example, W3C verifiable credentials, these have been developed in very consultative processes that take into account all these things. But as you said, there will always be nuances. Indonesia is an extremely diverse, extremely complex country, and so one size is not going to fit all. The final part of your question about what makes a good ID system. So we've worked with about 30 organizations to develop 10 principles on ID for sustainable development. They come under the 3 themes of inclusion, design, and governance. I'm not going to read them out, but there's no coincidence that there's 10 commandments and there's 10 principles on ID for sustainable development. I would suggest you can go to idprinciples.org and you can access what those are. But the final point I wish to make to this question is that the pathway that every country is going to take is going to be different, but we do see one commonality, and Kwek Sin also referred to this in his last answer. There's 3 steps towards digital identity. The first step is that you get everyone a legal identity. Birth registration, national ID cards, obviously that's KTPL here in Indonesia. Then you link that to services. So people are used to using this when they open a bank account, when they go to a government office, the government agencies start to use the ID number, the banks start to use this for their KYC processes, etc. Then the third step is digital identity. Now, it's a pyramid, right? So one is built on top of the other. Indonesia is at that second stage, and there's a lot of efforts now to move to that third stage. You have a very good foundation, Dukcapil. The fact that Dukcapil has registered around 97% of the population in a country of this size, this geography, this complexity is quite phenomenal. And we've been working with them to look at how to turn this into a robust, basic digital identity.
Thanks, Jonathan. I share your belief that if we are going to complete that third step, then we'll get that virtuous circle going, and then the digital economy will take off. And I noticed that in your comments, you mentioned a lot of threes. It seems like there's a law of threes going on here. And in one of your pieces of thought leadership in ID40's thought leadership, which you're responsible for as well, you mentioned 3 pillars. And at the same time, Pak Davids and Pak Niki also mentioned the importance of education to establish trust in digital ID and the importance of cybersecurity to maintain the trust in digital ID. How do these 3 pillars, can you enunciate them to the audience and then share with us how they can also help establish trust in digital identity infrastructure?
Sure. So trust in this context is a very complex thing, and it's become a very sexy word. Everyone throws trust at anything to maybe make it seem more complex and philosophical than what it is. But fundamentally, what is trust? So I love this example that I go on Tokopedia, and when I'm looking for sellers, sometimes you'll see them taking with their photo, their profile photo, they'll be holding their KTPL, because that's how they want to make sure that the potential buyers trust that this is a real person, right? That if something goes wrong, maybe I can take a screenshot of that ID card and then I can go to the police and deal with this. Now there you've seen most of the elements of trust. First is confidence in the transaction, right? That you're not dealing with some robot in some other country, that you're gonna get what you're asking for. The other element is accountability. If something goes wrong, where can I go, right? And that's going to be one of the challenges. You see a lot of people talking about concepts like decentralized identity, self-sovereign identity, etc. These all sound great in principle, but fundamentally, what happens when something goes wrong? What happens when somebody takes over my identity and it's on some blockchain? And I lose control of it, right? So the principles that I mentioned earlier, the 3 pillars, in terms of inclusion, the key element there is about identifying the barriers to access, not just access, but also usage. For instance, biometrics, they can be excellent, but also don't forget, especially in a country like Indonesia, biometrics is not going to work for everybody, right? So you've got to have alternatives for those people. Second, when it comes to design, one of the biggest challenges, especially for governments when it comes to digital identity, is vendor and technology lock-in. So coming back to this issue of standards, is the data in an interoperable, open format? Or is it in a proprietary format that it will cost an arm and a leg to migrate to another solution? So the adoption of open standards, not just open standards, but good procurement, good contract management is key. When it comes to governance, obviously I mentioned accountability earlier. The other element is the legal frameworks. Now there's been a really good development here in Indonesia with the passage of the Personal Data Protection Law. That's going to make a lot of headway in increasing trust in Indonesia, because now citizens will have a bit more there's more responsibilities when it comes to collecting and processing personal data. And once the Data Protection Authority is established, citizens will have somewhere to go if something goes wrong.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. I think we're out of time, but let me just highlight that a lot of the things that Jonathan mentioned align with the work that Pak Davids and Pak Niki and I have been doing in the Digitalization Task Force. We encourage interoperable standards. We discourage vendor lock-in. So a lot of these things, I think we're very happy to see that we are eye to eye on between your organization and the B20 task force. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope for your support. I invite everyone to the B20 summit that's going to be held in Bali in November. And thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you to my esteemed panelists. And now I will hand it back over to the MC.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our moderator and our esteemed panelists for this insightful conversation. First, we'd like to invite the moderator, Pak Johannes Lukiman, and all esteemed panelists to please stay on stage for a group photo session. We invite the photographers to please commemorate this very joyous occasion where you can get this esteemed panelists for the first panel discussion. All right, on my count, let's all face the camera. 3, 2, 1. There you have it. Thank you so much once again to the moderator, Bapak Johannes Lukiman, and all esteemed panelists. Thank you for sharing with us your time and expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a really quick coffee break just to make sure that everyone is back so we can all join in for the second panel discussion. We're just going to do a quick setup for the next panel discussion. So the first panel discussion's theme was promoting digital trust, compliance, and market adoption, and digital transformation for underserved communities. We hope that you can get many insights from our speakers so you can tap into the big potential that Indonesia has when it comes to digital economy. And now for the second panel discussion, we will discuss another interesting topic, the role of digital trust in increasing financial inclusion for SMEs. Now, of course, we are very fortunate to have another set of panelists. They are very excited to share with you their experiences in this matter. And hopefully we can also get many insights, inspiration, and motivation so we can all be key players in scaling trust in the digital world in Indonesia, throughout the region, and even the world. Now, of course, all of you, all participants, are more than welcome to refill your coffee and tea to make sure that you have enough energy to continue with the following agenda of tonight's event, the second panel discussion. Again, we thank everyone who's still staying right here for the B20 Digital ID Workshop, Scaling Trust in the Digital World, right here at Hotel Ayana. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate your attendance. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we are now going to continue with the next session, the second panel discussion, where we will discuss the role of digital trust in increasing financial inclusion for SMEs. And now we'd like to invite the moderator who will guide the second panel discussion. She is a professional moderator as well as See Today's news anchor. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alia Rahma.
Introduction also. Good evening, everyone. Some familiar faces. I see you again, Mr. Johannes. You know, having this mic as a legacy from Mr. Johannes, of course, it's a burden actually. But my name is Rahma Alia, and it is an honor for me to moderate this next session. So let's dedicate this session to talk about the trust that we really need in the midst of Indonesia's digital transformation, and also how the digital identity can actually help to create the trust that is needed between the service providers and the service users. And if we look at the pandemic, it basically has made us enter this very unprecedented digital inclusion. Although there still remain gaps between the early adopters and the later adopters, which is the new users, but at least it shows how a lot of people tried to survive and gone online. I mean, a lot of online sellings happened during the pandemic, right? So I want to bring out some data here. There's the data of Economy 2021 that was revealed by this team of Google with Temasek and also Bain and Company. Shows that during the course of the pandemic, there were 21 million new digital users in Indonesia, and 72% of that new users were actually from non-urban areas. So here, digital inclusion has probably been started already, but we need to do more in order to make more and more people coming into the ecosystem. Now, we don't forget about the SMEs because it is one of the main sectors that actually helped us to survive throughout the pandemic. We know that it makes about 61% of the total GDP and also absorbs 97% of the total workforce. But the problem is, from the 65.4 million MSMEs in Indonesia, only about 20 million have been integrated into the digital ecosystem. So the work is still there. We need a lot of collaboration. So let's talk about this issue in this segment. So I want to invite 5 speakers on my stage tonight. First of all, I would like to invite to the stage Mr. Triyono Gani, Executive Director of Digital Financial Innovation Group of Financial Services Authority, or OJK. Selamat malam, silakan Bapak. Please have a seat. I hope you're doing fine, Pak. Yes, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And also our second speaker, please welcome to the stage Mr. Yudi Hamka, President Director PT MNC Capital Indonesia Tbk, as well as CTO MNC Group. Silakan Bapak, please join us also on the stage. Now I have 2 already. Let's now invite to the stage Mr. Howard Nugraha Gani, Chief Executive Officer Mitra Bukalapak. Please join us as well, Pak, on the stage. It's great to have you as well here. And now I have another gentleman who is going to join us also on the stage, Mr. Joseph Georgino Godong, as EVP Information Technology, Indonesia Financial Group. Selamat malam, good evening. And the last but not least, I'm gonna invite another female to the studio, not studio, but stage, because I'm usually doing it on studio. Miss Sati B. Raswanto, Deputy Secretary General of 4 and Head of Personal Data Protection Task Force of the Indonesian FinTech Association. I've got all of my speakers tonight. I hope everyone is doing great. So reiterating again from the first session, we already saw how digital identity trust is built not only in Indonesia, but also we've seen some cases throughout the world, as mentioned by some of the speakers. But let's focus it in Indonesia this time. First of all, I'd like to we have a regulatory body. We also have industry players right now, service provider as well. So my question would start by asking Mr. Yudi Hamka. We know that MNC Bank has been operating for about 8 years, if I'm not mistaken, and we've seen continuous efforts from your bank as well to provide financial services for the underserved communities in Indonesia. Now, the question would be, since we're talking about digital identity, how would it help your journey in furthermore serving the underserved, unbanked, underbanked communities in Indonesia?
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. I think just take a flashback a little bit. As a group, we're known very much as a media company. In fact, today, it is still the largest part of our business. And I think it will relate to what we're discussing today, because our media actually not only is the biggest chunk of our business, but also will be able to help in terms of the education side of digital identity, the education side of financial inclusion, because our free-to-air, blessed in disguise during the COVID time, has reached to 50% audience share, which means that 50% of 275 million Indonesian people watch MNC television networks, which is a powerful vehicle for us to reach out to the 51% unbankables. Now, why we built digital bank is because we think when we compete in the conventional way or non-digital way, everyone will, we know, already pretty much predicted who is going to be the winner, of course, right? So the biggest bank in terms of number of branches, number of capital, and ATM network, and so on. But we feel with digitalization, and particularly on the digital financial services or digital banking services, I think from the industry perspective, we started seeing a very healthy co-opetitions. Sometimes we compete, sometimes we collaborate, right, with, from one to another. I think digital identity will make a lot of sense. First, we start shifting from account opening with the basis of just cash burning campaign to generating transaction. Right? I think long gone, we give away a lot of freebies or burning cash in order just to acquire customers. But the question is, how do we get them doing transaction in our digital platform? And that's why digital identity will become extremely important, not only for us to be able to do verification, but accelerations of this digital adoption. Efficiency for industries, because it's more efficient. We had experience when we had video KYC, and I can tell you, we actually promoted the program on our TV that has reached out to Papua and Maluku and all these people, not only in Jakarta. And when we do video KYC and when we call them, they're actually people in the village wearing, farmer's clothing, right? Right in the farm, right? They're not ready to take on video call, right? And from that moment, we think that must be a way to reach out to these people automatically. And I think biometrics and digital identity will be an important part of it for us to grow.
But the problem is that some of the people where they are located in the underserved communities, like you mentioned before, they're not very much digital illiterate, so they don't know what digital identity is. How do you think this problem can be solved?
Well, to be a little bit selfish as a media company covering Indonesia, I think for our industry, I think it helps a lot in terms of educating the unbankable, not only for our business but also for the industry. Back then, when we started QRIS, we actually helped Bank Indonesia with the fact that we're the largest producer of content in terms of Sinetron, Dangdut, Indonesian Idol, Ikatan Cinta, and all these programs, right, that are dominating, that has very decent audience share. 48% over the past 8 months consecutively. It's actually a good achievement. And these are watched by these people. And I think we can use our media to educate them, not only about digital, but also how to use them. You know how we educated QRIS? I remember we have a scene in Tukang Ojek Pengkolan, right? It's with 2 Ojek guys trying to buy a cigarette. We actually make it a part of the Sinetron, part of the program. It's not an ads because people will skip the ads. But because we have capability to build content, we actually stitch the promotion, the education inside the content. Yeah. So instead of 2 drivers, one guy tried to buy a cigarette and they don't have any cash, and the other guy said, "Why don't you use QRIS?" What is QRIS? Here you go, like that. It is actually part of the Sinetron, part of the drama, and people don't feel that as a part of advertisement and being sold on. And that's, I think, how we get into the unconscious mind of the unbankable communities in Indonesia.
I also realized that. I mean, I watched some kind of Cinetrons and I saw some 2 of the actors or actresses, drinking juices, and it's, apparently it's part of the advertisement, but you don't really feel like it's part of the advertisement. So yeah, so that's a very, very smart way. Thank you so much, Pak Yudi. So I'd like now to go to Pak Howard Nugrahagani. We know that Bukalapak is very, very, it's a leading in the online to offline market. And you reached about, how many SMEs already now under your wing?
In Mitra Bukalapak, we have registered 14 million.
14?
SMEs, yes.
Now, we heard that the Ministry of Cooperatives and SMEs has a target of getting 30 million MSMEs by 2024. So what efforts has Bukalapak made to support this Kemenkop's agenda?
I think specifically in Mitra Bukalapak, our tagline has been Warung Neklas, which translating English is a micro business leveling up. Right? And we have been very focused in doing this. And if I can share a bit that pretty much the way I see things is we approach it in 2 prongs, right? The first thing is we provide access. The second thing is provide education. The access is pretty basic, it's fundamental, right? We want to make sure that the Mitras is able to access more varieties of products. They're able to sell more volume. They're able to sell more products, basically. And we provide a couple of ranges in physical products, in digital products, financial products, and we also venture out to other products like being a logistics providers as well. So we enable the Mitras to do all that. And on top of that, the Mitras have another capabilities. They're able to compare prices. They're able to compare items. They're able to have the confidence that when they order certain items, it'll arrive on their shops at certain time, right, at 24 hours or so, without having to close down their shops, right? Simple things like that. The second bit is education, and I think the first panel touched that as well. We're very focused on this. We invested quite a bit in education because I think it's very important to make sure that the Mitra is able to have confidence in using the application, in kind of understanding what the features is. Because at the end of the day, we see the Mitras as our partner because they need to face the customer, which is the offline buyers. So they need to understand what the product they're trying to sell. And in our product development, in our UI development, UX development, we always, I always push the team to ask that question, right? Does the Mitra understands it? Right? If the Mitra doesn't understand it, there's no point. Right? We have to come back to the drawing board and understand it. And secondly, apart from the digitalization or digital communication, we actually invested as well in building a community. Like we call them Juara, right? The Mitra community, which we connect directly, right? So these Mitra communities are some of the most active Mitras that we have, and they give us those questions, right? They ask those questions about, okay, what does the product do, and can you give us more information, and vice versa as well. We use them to test products. We use them to get ideas and make sure that our ideas actually gives value to these people. And I think in terms of impact today, we understand that because we're one of the first movers. We have, I believe in the last survey, 52% of the market, and today we have 14 million registered Mitra in the platform. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, as the minister also mentioned that it's very important to create a very safe, very easy access, very easy way to make all the SMEs join into the ecosystem. You've dealt with a lot of MSMEs, the warungs, the stalls and all that. Of course, throughout the process, it's not always easy. As you mentioned as well, there are a lot of education needed as well. But what are the biggest challenges, or what is the biggest challenge, if there's any, to actually invite them and to gain their trust?
Digitalization for the Mitra I see it as a learning curve because it's part of the education, right, for them. And if we're able to, and digitalization is kind of, we need, the way I see it, if we can speed up the Mitra's process, the Mitra's journey towards learning curve, it will help them level up much faster. So some of the biggest questions that I put forward when we introduce a product is that, number one, what are the values for the Mitra that we are delivering to these features? And secondly, how do we make sure that the adoption to this feature or this new product is as seamless and as easy as possible, right? And those two are some of the big questions that I always put forward to make sure that we are actually bringing values and we're actually addressing and bringing the Mitra on board towards the digitalization process. And in terms of value, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, the questions run, is it significant for the Mitra, right? Does it move the needle for the Mitras, right? And if it is not, then let's go back and think about it. And secondly, around adoption, it's really a focus point for us, right? Because in our experience, in the feedbacks that we get, micro businesses have a tendency to be more hesitant in terms of adopting new technologies, right? And that's why we always approach it in two ways. We make sure that our user interface, our user experience is as easy as possible, right? It's as seamless as possible. And we make sure that, in our design, we tested it with our Juara group, we tested it with real Mitras to get their feedback. And secondly, the community. It is not just about us communicating to them, right? It's about them talking to us, and also Mitras talking and communicating with each other. Because, well, I would say the magic of all of this is if the Mitras start sharing their stories, start sharing their troubles, and start, looking at, some sort of improvements that are the other Mitras that, within the same industry, even within the same areas that they're able to do, they can build a much better confidence, right, in moving towards this digitalization process.
Yeah, as we know, Indonesians are quite of a FOMO. I mean, they cannot, miss out anything. So from words of mouth, sometimes it's more encouraging. But it's true that it's not only to encourage them to be able to compete in the modern market, but also to encourage them to be included in the financial ecosystem. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise as well as your experiences with us here, Pak Howard. Now, I'd like to go to Pak Joseph, or Pak Joe maybe. Lebih enak ya?
Yeah.
All right, now, Pak Joseph, so as many SMEs have seen the potential to join the digital ecosystem, how can digital identity play a role in increasing the SMEs' trust into the ecosystem?
Okay, I like to twist a little bit. Okay, now if we look the digital world today and make it simple, then we have one axis talking about underserved into full suite of service, and the other axis is that those are very savvy and those are very naive. The interesting part, when we cross that two lines into 4 quadrants, the one that underserved, which is also the one that really naive, is the one that have a very high trust. Okay, so those guys that not savvy at all, and having no service at all, and those guys are the one that have a very high trust in everything new. Okay, now. Another interesting part, I think it's because MNC maybe, yeah. I met with somebody, came from 1.5 hours drive from Solo up north.
Yeah.
Okay. This guy cannot have any connectivity if he's not walking out from his house for few hundred meters or half kilometers. Okay. But this guy, when you talk to this guy, he can mention about unboxing. The terms unboxing means what? Means he's quite savvy, but there is no surf. He's underserved, right? Now the story, if you look at that, yeah. For us to build underserved into full suite of service is talking just about how much money we like to spend. Although it's a marathon, the finish line is always moved, yeah. But then again, it's talking about money. Now, what the other panelists mentioned, talking about, okay, why don't we work together? Why don't we just collaborate? Now, that will help us to move faster and cheaper. But there's one thing. My point, I will say that it's more interesting to look at the safeness, because again, the last panel is saying about literacy, right? So education, literacy. But the problem is sometimes we can put capability, skill, but not the knowledge and the wisdom. So sometimes, again, they know about unboxing team, but they don't know what is the risk of having an internet connection, an application. So the challenge is for building trust is to put wisdom, because the trust is there. Most people are having that. But the wisdom of using what they can use, that will be the challenge.
Wow, I mean, digital is always having, it's like a sword with, two faces.
Yes.
One way is very much giving you advantage. On the other side, it's actually risking you. So you have to have this kind of wisdom, as you mentioned. So that's a very, very wise way of looking at it. I mean, thank you so much for bringing it up. But I have a next question for you, Pak Joe. The concept of digital trust that has been brought up today in today's discussion as well. How can digital trust determine the willingness of MSMEs to take part in the digital ecosystem? As you mentioned, they have the big trust, but on the other hand, mentioned as well by Pa before, bahwa this is not as easy as that. They are very reluctant as well at first, although they would, gain the trust, but pretty reluctant at first. So how do you think we can, gain their trust?
Okay, I will say if we have a good product, in today's world, the hype is there. As you mentioned, word of mouth is there. So if somebody successfully doing something digitally, then the next guy will do it.
Okay.
And it's easy. That one is the easy part. Now, the more difficult part is that, again, how to teach them, right? Before we heard about what the regulators say, right? Talking about putting restrictor here and there, because most of the time the regulator put restriction, right? Now I will say the most important thing for the regulator to do is to put transparency, because if there is transparency, so everybody knows what is really behind the door, then it will build the trust. The technology is there. No worries about the technology. The difficulty is the mindset. And I will say the transparency will help to build the mindset that building the trust between all the players. That will be.
So you have to be transparent from the very beginning. Yes. All right, thank you so much, Pak Jo, for bringing out your perspectives in this. Now I'd like to go to Mbak Sati first. Mbak Sati, VIDA, as we know, is one of the leading player in the digital identity industry in Indonesia, and it's showing the commitment and efforts to help the SMEs to go digital. Now, why is it important for SMEs to integrate into the digital ecosystem?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for being here. It's been very interesting to hear the word digital trust mentioned multiple times. I think, like Jonathan said, it was not a vocabulary even 4 years ago, so it's very exciting to hear it being really adopted tonight. And I think you mentioned all the stats that shows about what small medium enterprise mean for Indonesia, right? It's 97% of the employment, it's 61% of the GDP. So really it is the bedrock of what our digital economy in Indonesia will be if we want to increase it, if we want to really achieve financial inclusion. MSME is the way. And if you think about MSME as 97% employment in Indonesia, those people have families. So they are also the bedrock of other things for the country. I think Howard already mentioned about education. Someone else in the previous panel talked about this, right? So the basic part of the education is learning how to use the app. But then beyond that, they're going to start to learn about how do I manage funds better? How do I leverage loans? And that actually dissipates through the whole ecosystem. It's not just that one MSME, but it's the whole community around them, and it's the family. And I think I like what you said, Pak, which is it's about the mindset and giving them the confidence, right? That's what Howard said. It's giving them the confidence that they have control over their destiny, and that's very powerful.
Wow, okay, that's quite a powerful message as well, Mbak Sati. But I have the second question for you. So while the government targets 30 million, as we also said before, to be part of the digital ecosystem by 2024, so that's not long from now. So how does the secure digital identity provided by VIDA, in this case, support the partners, your partners, in integrating SMEs into the digital ecosystem again?
So in VIDA, we have these 4 pillars, right? The 4 pillars of speed, scale, secure, and social impact. And for us, the speed is important for our partners because people don't want to wait, right? People want to be able to get into those platforms, fast. Because if you have to wait, then people get bored, right? It's an instant gratification kind of world, right? You want to make sure you get it right there and then. You capture them and you convert them and you get them into the platform. And then the second one is secure. So how do you make sure that all of this is done? There's
standards that was talked about, right? How can we make sure that all of this is done in a secure and privacy-enhancing manner? And then the third part is scale. I mean, Howard talks about 14 million, right? Talk about 13 million. So I think serving 1 customer, 10 customer, 100,000 customer, 1 million customer, I mean, scalability, that's where things start to break down, right? And being able to serve customers in a scalable way is sort of how we kind of think about that. And then, of course, the fourth piece is the social impact part, which is just as important as all the first three. Because for us, social impact doesn't just mean being able to enable those MSMEs, but how do you make sure that we enable MSMEs that are in Papua when bandwidth is small? How do we make sure that, for example, our facial recognition can cater not just a certain type of face, or when a woman is wearing hijab in different ways, because Indonesia is so wonderful in that way, how can we make sure that those people are not rejected from the platform just because they wear hijab in a certain way and not other ways, right?
And maybe Botox the next day, so they don't
That's
recognize
different
anymore.
But yeah, so for us, social impact is also about how do we build a technology that is inclusive. It's not just about helping the MSMEs, but actually at the core, building these rails that are fundamentally be able to be used by every type of people, every different segments, et cetera, because again, this is a very diverse and very wonderful country in that way.
All right, thank you, Mbak Sati. Now we heard from the industry. Now we have the regulator here from OJK, Pak Triyono. So from your perspective, Pak Triyono, Indonesia's digital financial services are on the rise, as we know. But on the other hand, financial services still face a lot of challenges. One of the biggest challenges is creating a secure environment. And this is reiterated by the minister as well in the earlier speech. So how can digital identity play a role in creating a secure, safe environment for MSMEs in this case to be part in it?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think a lot of things have been covered by the previous speakers. But let me just share a little bit on how difficult to build the digital financial ecosystem in Indonesia, because according to our latest regulation, this is the POJK number 13, and as Pak Iman just mentioned, our mandate is to build the whole ecosystem of the digital financial industry in Indonesia. So this is quite a very, quite difficult job to do, because as you probably know that even for the conventional financial literacy itself in Indonesia, the level is still not really low, but I think it's in ASEAN probably our numbers still considered as very, very below the average. So, and then we can move then to the next stage, which we are now introducing the digital finance. So I think you can imagine how difficult this task would be. But I think we are committed in OJK to pay our support and also effort to develop this ecosystem very carefully. And if you can see, we also built from two sides. The first would be from the supply side. We expect all the players in digital financial sector, they can generate the service that is categorized as the responsible innovation services. So I think it should be then be responsible to the customer and also to the industry itself. And the second would be the development of the literacy level of the customer. So I think we do both, and we are carefully doing this with the association and also the industry. We do all the regulation, the necessary one, and also we drafted the regulation carefully. Where can we, accommodate all the competition, which is not really disruptive into the industry, but which are very cooperative and also very favorable to the development and innovation. But in the meantime, we also educate the people. We also develop some material for the digital financial literacy. And we also know that our aim would be targeting the youngsters and also creating the format that can be very friendly to the digital savvy people, in this case, the students and also all the youngsters. And we develop our education material using our, for example, using the game format, so interactive games. So it will be very interesting other than just reading materials or books. It will be very boring, but I think by doing all the interactive games, so we do hope that the knowledge will be delivered very well to all the users, and also again talking about all the youngsters and the future customers of the financial sector. I think basically we do both, we do the necessary activities to develop the whole ecosystem.
All right, Patriono. So, I mean, nowadays, if you want to sign up to a bank or something, it's the process is very easy. Usually, you have to have like this video call and interview, show your identification card and all that. But perhaps in due course, it will be all automated. Probably a robot will face you. So my next question will be, Patriono, why do digital services, including the financial services, need to implement secure digital identity in their verification process?
Yeah, I think if you see the level of development in digital financial sector in Indonesia, we are still in the very early stage of development, I guess. But the conversion from the traditional into the more fully digital platform would be very difficult and takes time. And the first would be how to introduce the security, and just to make sure to them that using the digital platform, they can gain not only the better service, but also the better security as well. This is a very difficult thing to do, because they used to have very basic activities by, for example, receiving money, and also all the things is doing very physically. So they can face the customer directly. They cannot, doing something that is relatively virtual. So it is very difficult job, and also we have to really give assurance to them that even though you are now doing the virtual things, virtual services, but still they can achieve more security, and also in terms of efficiency, they can also get some benefit on them. So again, I hope that in the future, once they can get, or maybe I can say that in short, let them try first. And when they have already get to know the benefit, and also they already know the services, so I think in the future they can have a repetition, or maybe they can do a lot more in terms of doing the such similar services in the future. So I think the biggest point is, the most important point is, let them try first, and then they will, once they get the benefits, so they will have, in the future they will then do the same thing again. Yeah.
So they will not know without trying it first.
Exactly.
Yes,
yeah. Trying is the most important thing. Yes.
Yes, and we have agreed that literacy is very important. So a lot of efforts needs to be put in this particular focus, especially knowing that a lot of underserved are not very much familiar with the terms of digital trust, ecosystem of digital inclusion, and all that. So how can digital identity players support the financial literacy efforts?
Yeah. Again, if we talk about the role, and also the role of the game of entering to the digital financial ecosystem, certainly they have to know the prerequisite, or the rule of the game, basically. So I think without knowing the proper rule of the game, they can then get ripped off, or maybe something like that. There's something bad can happen in the future. So in our module of digital financial literacy, we introduce to them how to represent yourself into the virtual market. So how to develop their security, how to develop their password and their username. And we call it try to be the cyber ninja. So I think this is a very interesting material and the first step that before you are entering into the digital financial activities. And we have a lot of module that we have to deliver to the customer, but since the budget itself would be the constraint, so we think we choose at least 4 top priority topics that we should develop at first, and one of which is the cyber ninja, how to protect themselves and how to then deal with the very complex financial activities in virtually. So I think that's the most interesting point, and also the stress from regulators to all the customer. Before you entering the market, you should have a proper shield that you can protect themselves.
All right. Now, just as a key takeaway for all of us, I just want to ask all of our panelists here. So maybe starting from you, Mbak Sati. So can digital identity increase the digital inclusion? This is like the last key takeaway so that everybody...
It's like a yes/no question.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. This is like a test.
Well, I think we are all in agreement how important it is, how important digital identity is to ensure secure, privacy-enhanced transactions. But I think just like any other technology, right, the digital literacy part, the adoption part, it's one thing to adopt a technology, it's another to transact with them. And so it's not just, hey, adopt it, but ensuring that that system continuously being upgraded because, cybersecurity is also catching up. We were talking about it with, I was talking about it with Pak Triyono earlier about we have to keep up. It's not just a one-off thing. It's a continuous effort by all stakeholders.
All right, thank you, Mbak Sati. Pak Jo, words from you.
Definitely. At least it will help us to manage the investment and the cost better, because again, it is part of all the process, even the basic part of it, and if somebody can do it very good and serve everybody, then it will be definitely one things that helping us to penetrate to the market more.
All right. Pak Howard. Thank you, Pak Jo.
Maybe I'll look at digitalization as it is, right? For me, digitalization is a gradual process. It's not a 0 to 1 process, right? I'll give you an example. We recently talked to one of our mitra, Bumade. She has a 2x2 kiosk in Denpasar, in Bali. From a very young age, she had to drop school, so she didn't finish primary school. She had to support her family from a very young age financially. One day she has an inkling idea. She saw Mitra Bukalapak, she hears about it, and she has an inkling idea to try it, right? And she grabs her husband's phone, and she literally tried to go through the product. She unfortunately has a son that is more technology savvy. She asked her son to, can you give it can you teach me how to use it, right? And after a few iterations, she starts to be a bit more confident. Today she's able to use it by herself. She's able to sell Pulsar. She's able to access all the different products, right, on our application. Today she's able to increase her income by 2 times. She is the breadwinner of her family. She's able to buy a new handphone for her husband, right? So from that example, there's 2 things. The first one is impact, right? Obviously, that drives us in Mitra Bukalapak as well. If we see stories like that, we say, wow, right? And secondly is about the digitalization process, right? From that testimony alone, you can see that it's not a 0 to 1. It's a gradual process, 2-pronged process, digitally, and also hybrid on the financial side, where her son steps in, right, to bring her on board. So I think it's similar towards how later on, digital identity contributes to digitalization. It'll be a process, right?
All right, so it's a yes, yes, and a yes, although a little long, answer, but yes. So now, Pak Yudi.
Well, it's a tricky question. I'll give you a tricky answer.
All right, okay, this is interesting.
Well, can digital ID support digital adoption? Yes, but with 4 conditions.
Okay, yes, but
with 4 conditions. 1 is cheaper.
Yeah.
2nd is faster. 3rd is better. Last one is safer.
Faster, cheaper, better, faster.
Safer, right. Usually it's only three for me. As a CEO, you want things to be cheap, to be fast, right? But since we're in the digital ID, you have to add the safer part.
Okay.
The first two is actually for the industry. Now, for the industry, what we care is how we can process these applications and onboard people as soon as possible. It has to be fast and has to be cheap. Yeah. Video KYC is an option, but it's not cheap. And it's slow, right? And the last two is from the user perspective, that it has to be better. It has to be better experience for them. Today is the era of integration, open API, that we need to start collaborating ecosystem, maybe opening motion banking account and then buying purchase in Bukalapak, right? And then we borrow money somewhere else, right? Imagine if we have, KYC on each and every single platform, right? I think it's a headache. So from the user perspective, to make them easy to adopt and obviously safer, right? And on the education side, I think one of the advice is to look at different platforms. There's no such a platform fits for all in terms of education in Indonesian people. You have the segment of housewives. You have the segments of, rural areas, farmers, for example. You cannot use social media because they're probably more for millennials, right, and gamification for certain segment. But you have to use variety of media platform in order to reach out to, the variety of Indonesian population. And I think if we can do that, we can unbox the financial inclusion to success.
Unboxing. That's nice. That's nice. So yes, but with conditions, 4 conditions. Now, Pak Triyono, I think you are the very, very factor that will decide whether it is a yes or a no. That's why he's put last.
I don't have to decide because all gentlemen here and also Ibu.
Yeah.
Also mentioning about the yes. I can share a very interesting sentence. I also heard this from the previous session, that trust should be built, not given. So I think this is very important sentence. It means that we have to build the trust. And one way to build the trust is try to have one very reliable digital ID. So I think this is very straightforward and also convincing statement, and I will support this 100%. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think we have agreed that digital services are the entrance to the safe digital services that improve people's quality of life, and hopefully we gain trust by giving them the transparency and also the wisdom, as Pak Jo already mentions. And I think collaboration is very much needed in this. And hopefully the B20 Indonesia as Indonesian Presidency 2022 can give the legacy as well for the betterment of this, not only in this country, but also in the other G20 countries. So thank you so much for all my esteemed panelists. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And also thank you for all of you for staying up until late tonight. And stay wide awake as well. I am Rahma Alia. Thank you once again, and I'm giving back the stage to you, Ms. Siska Becker. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up one more time for our second panel discussion. Thank you, moderator and esteemed panelists, for such an informative and insightful conversation. Let's proceed to the middle of the stage for a group photo session, so we can celebrate this proud moment where we all share our time together, sharing ideas, sharing our expertise for innovation and inspiration and motivation for digital economy. Now let's look forward to the camera on my count. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we have many cameras, so let's do another one to make sure we have the best picture together. Okay, maybe another pose, yes? We're allowed to do that in this hour. 3, 2, 1. Let's put our hands together one more time. Thank you so much. There was indeed a very interesting and lively discussion. Thanks to our esteemed panelists with the different backgrounds and of course different points of views on a very interesting topic, the role of digital trust in increasing financial inclusion for SMEs. A pivotal role to have a successful digital economy in Indonesia. Thank you once again, Ms. Alia Rahma. Great job moderating. And thank you to our esteemed panelists. And thank you to all of you distinguished guest participants for staying until the end of the second panel discussion. And with that, we have come to the end of our event. A very big thank you once again to all honorable speakers who have spoken here on stage today for us. Thank you for sharing with us your time, your expertise, your insights, your inspiration, and your motivation, so we all can be key players in making digital economy in Indonesia, throughout the region, and throughout the G20 member countries a success. Thank you all for your presence. We truly appreciate your attendance, and we hope that you enjoyed everything that we've been offered in this event. I'm Siska Becker on behalf of the whole committee. Thank you once again. Good night, and please enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, everyone.